Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to the last day of the Road to World Playoffs. Today is the seeding day. It's Gormizer, it's Trelly, and of course, we have gone through a very fun bracket so far this week and a lot of entertaining games. We've already found yesterday the two teams, the Kings and the Ravens, who are going to be joining the Glads and the Hounds, and then our 4 SCC champions in January. That's a little further down the road, and you don't have to worry too much about it. It's a few weeks, well, actually a few weeks away, about a month. I think for NA, and then 3 weeks for EU. So if you want to be watching those, we'll make sure that you know where to go. But for today, a lot of what we're going to be determining is strictly seeding going into Worlds. So all 4 of these teams have qualified. The question is just going to be where. So starting up first is going to be third, fourth. Second is first, second seed. And there's a lot of pressure on them. So this entire tournament, again, was to lead to these 4 teams. Which is exactly what we've done. We found the 4 that are going to be going: Ferrymen, Leviathans, Dragons, Warriors. They've been playing their best of 5s. They're going to continue these best of 5s today. But what they're playing for is going to be the number 1 seed. Gets choice of any of the teams that qualify from those main brackets. So whether it's the 4 SPL teams or any of the 4 SCC teams that come to challenge them, that 8-team bracket's going to result in 4 teams going to Worlds. Whoever gets first today in that second match gets to choose any of those 4. Second seed will then choose from the last 3. Third seed will get the last 2. And 4th seed gets the remainder, right? And last year, that was a big deal. Last year, we saw Hex Mambo get thrown in there and cause some trouble because nobody wanted to pick them. You also saw the Leviathans pick their demise when they locked in the Titans in that World Championship bracket. So there is some interesting change-ups that it can cause for that Worlds bracket. And up first, it's going to be the 3rd, 4th seed. Again, this is going to determine if you get to choose at all or if you're just left with your opponent between the Dragons and the Warriors. And Trelly, this one's going to be one that I think is going to be pretty interesting. I think the Dragons have been in a very intriguing spot, and we've seen them have some fun games, fun style that they've brought into this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think that's something we were expecting, when it came to these sort of matchups is got to be some meta shift ups, you can't be bringing the stuff you've been bringing all season. Everyone's studied that, everyone's learned that. You got to bring something new to the table, and that's exactly what's been happening, right? I've been loving what we've seen from Dardez in particular. He's been going to, the traditionals every once in a while. He can still go to the Morrigan. He can still say, hey, we've got Chernobog, we've got Camazotz. Why not have 2 of those? But also he can go to the Maman Brigitte mid. He can go to the Kukulkan. Like, there are so many different options that the Dragons could go for. And because of that, it's hard to draft against them.
And it's made things very interesting. I mean, even just looking at like the top gods that we've seen so far just this weekend. First off, a lot of mages on that list. Not really surprised by that, but it has been, I think, fun to see the entirety of the god versatility that we have had through a lot of these, and through multiple roles at that, to the point where in some of these games we've not had Warriors or Guardians, and it's just been run it down and see who wins, which, who knows, maybe that's going to be a little bit of what we get today. So, Trelly, when you're looking at these 2 teams, where do you see the contention coming to a head? I
mean, both of these squads like to play through dual lane pressure if they can. It's all about, can you grab a high-pressure support? Can you grab a high-pressure ADC? And if we get that, can we control shield buffs? Can we have invades over here? So you got to look towards that dual lane first, and then everything else will follow.
Well, speaking of looking towards the duo lane, I think we have a couple of supports who are standing by ready for an interview.
That's right. We do have the support here from the respective teams. First of all, congratulations, guys, on making Worlds a seeding matchup for that 3rd and 4th seed. I want to get your thoughts before we get into the Worlds talk. You guys are, of course, supports, want to talk about the support meta. We're on this new patch, 10.12. We've gotten to see all the teams play throughout this weekend. What's your thought on the support meta thus far, and do you think people really have it down, or it's still forming?
I think every meta is always evolving. That's kind of what happens. Like, the deeper you go into something, the more people will try counter picks, stuff like that. Got a little bit of mage roulette going on in solo lane, so you kind of have to work around that. I think everybody's had their own different style, so it's been interesting to see.
Yeah, sort of similar thoughts, Jenna?
Yeah, support's looking a bit more useful, I think, recently, across the board, which I'm happy about, so.
Sport's looking a bit more useful. Now, I was talking to Inbound in the back, right, former SPL Sport. He was maybe saying, how you guys talk a little bit about the pressure meta and the crutch meta, and stuff of that nature, maybe about the alternative team. So I wanted to ask about your thoughts on genetics. What do you view the Jade Dragons dual lane as?
I would say both of our dual lanes are very good with pressure, which obviously we we both want to play that way. No one wants to play from behind. You'd rather be first in a race than last.
Wow, it sounds like Genetics. That's pretty aggressive talk. Calling you a pressure crusher there, Mike. Would you agree with that?
The thing is, we're not the pressure crutchers. Like, his ADC can only play 2 gods. My ADC can only play 1 god. So I'm at a disadvantage. Like, that's the issue.
We could see what happens.
Maybe some ADC bans coming through. Well, I mean, last question, guys. Got to ask you. Obviously, this set's coming up. Big stakes. We already heard, right? Those picks last year on who you're going to play, and of course, which side of the bracket you're on is going to be determined here by this seeding matchup. How you feeling about the set, and then any final words for your opponent?
As long as it doesn't go to 5, we've got a good chance because they've had a lot of practice with that one.
I try to take every set to 5, so good luck.
Thank you so much, guys. Good luck in your set. We'll throw it back to the desk.
It was mentioned, I believe, before the start of the Road to Worlds that Mike was 10 sets and he wanted 50 games played.
Right.
I think that did fall apart like literally the first set, and it was, okay, well, now it's 48 games played. But that was a goal for a long time. He's got a real good record. All they have to do is go up 2-0, and we're guaranteed 5.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. If Mike says I try to take every game to 5, and his team's up 2-0, is he just like actively throwing at that point, right? Like he's like,
he's a paid actor.
Yeah, we need to get to 5, boys. He just bans on her himself. He's like, all right, there we go. I have nerfed my duo lane.
They did just say, like, I mean, he said that Netrioid, has 2 gods.
Yep.
Coast has 1 god.
Yep.
And Genetics' immediate reply to that was, we've got 6 bans. we can change something here.
And I think there's a bit of overlap there, but yeah, it's going to be exciting to
Yeah,
watch.
they both play the honors.
Yeah, exactly. The ease of the honor, the Hachi. But Coast did pull out the Rama yesterday, and it looked real clean.
That's
so maybe
5 gods you got to get rid of.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit of sleeping on Coast God Pool, but nonetheless, I can see why, Genetics was saying both teams just like to play with pressure. Why wouldn't you, right? If I can load into a Smite game and just not lose lane, I would prefer that. You know what I mean? Like, I would prefer to get my purple buffs. I'd prefer to get shield buff off cooldown. So I like the ease of execution there of just, we like being ahead, as most people should, right? It's not like picking a safe ADC and just sitting back under tower is the ideal situation for just about anyone.
This one's going to be a fun one to watch, man. I feel like both of these teams, they joke about it, but like pressure, like duo lane, first off, is where the Dragons do like to play. Genetics brings, I think, that element to the duo lane as well, but it does feel like there's a certain element of run it down that one of these teams is going to drag the other into. There's also a chance, we've seen this before, or at least I've seen this, where I will come into a set looking at 2 teams that have been playing pretty aggressive, expecting a lot of blood, and then we'll have what happened in our set yesterday, right, with the Kings and the Dragons, where we got to like 20 minutes with a single kill at like 2 times, 3 times. And so it is definitely going to be, I think, some pressure on these teams to figure out, that leverage. We watched the Warriors yesterday. They got their gold leads ahead fast over the Ravens. And there were moments where if you covered up everything that wasn't the kills, it looked real even. It was like 4-3. Yeah. And then you extend that to the gold, and you're like, oh my god, it's 10,000 difference. What have they been doing in that meantime? And that's what they bring to the table.
I mean, that's the thing. Farm can be so impactful, right? If you're able to collect that farm quickly, if you're able to get last hits on minions, that's where pressure comes into play. That's when buff invades come into play. And that's not going to be shown on the kill cards, right? That's not going to be shown on the kill graphics. It's going to be on just every wave. You have to make sure you're getting your last hits. You have to make sure you're on your buff spawns. Is your jungler going to show up to that buff? Is he going to help you? Are you going to die? So much to consider. The micro and the macro comes into play so hard, and the Oni Warriors have been experts at that.
The thing I want to ask you, and it's because this is what these teams are playing for, right? We're going to Worlds. We don't know their opponents yet. We won't know their opponents literally until the first weekend of January. It's going to be so long to get to that point. It could be, as we saw, last year, it could be a couple of the SEC teams. Could be a couple of Pro League teams, right? You've already got the Hounds, the Glads. You've got the Ravens down there as Dark Horse, the Kings down there as Dark Horses. Literally any of the teams in Europe, I'm going to go ahead and qualify because last year that's what a big deal was. And so suddenly, out of those 8 teams, you're in the 3rd, 4th place match.
Right.
Which is the difference between I get to choose from 2 people, I don't get to choose at all. Yep. Right? If you lose this, you don't get a choice. You just get your opponent handed to you. Last year, I think we were talking about this earlier. You had said it was the Ravens. They got Hex Mambo because nobody wanted to pick Hex Mambo.
The Bolts.
Bolts. Sorry. Yes. Yeah, you're right. What become the Ravens?
Yes.
Yeah, the Bolts at the time. I honestly maybe forgot a little bit about the Olympus Bolts, if I'm being honest with you. Yeah, LASBRA's team at the time did pick or end up with Hex Mambo. We're lucky enough to beat them, even though Hex Mambo was honestly the favored team in that matchup. Maybe changes the Kings' runs depending on if they win. But that's all history, and that's all etched in stone. The real question I have for you is how important do you think it is, right? You know, to be able to choose even just a little bit. Because last year we also saw that power of choice when it given to the Leviathans caused a little bit of trouble for them because they ended up choosing an opponent that knocked them out first round.
Well, that's the difference maker, right? I think a lot of teams have different mindsets when it comes to getting to choose your opponents. I'm under the impression of if your goal is to be a world champion and you go into that event, it doesn't matter who's in front of you. You're gonna have to. You have
to beat everybody.
You gotta beat everybody. But with that being said, momentum, your mental just fortitude, being able to start off with an easy win and then build to that is also very important for some squads. You know, showing up and saying, "Hey, I'm gonna pick the worst team available. We're gonna hopefully just thrash them, and then be able to build that up and just get a world's run going." Maybe that's how your team operates, but most competitors, they know going into an 8-man bracket at the World Championships, there's a chance they have to beat every single person there. So I don't think it matters too much in that regard, but you know, momentum cannot be denied, and there are times when starting off with an easy win might be that mental boon your team needs to just sweep everyone else.
I think exactly what you said, which is having that mental boost, and that's something, you know, when you look at it and you've talked about it and look at years past, right? You look at players like Zap, like Neil, Paul, and people who have won a lot of championships, and a lot of it is just because like they, in those high pressure situations, are able to keep like, hey, we're down 0-2 and we're up against the best team in the world right now. Yep. We can keep it. Like, you just got to win the next one, right? And then after that, you just got to win the next one. Then after that, guess what? It's one more. And I think that's what we've seen and heard them talk about, especially in that Season 7 championship. That one, I recommend. If you did not watch the Season 7 championship, you missed out on some really, really good sets. And I've got great news for you. You can go to youtube.com/SmiteVod. And all of them are right there for you to consume. Just watch the PK runs. Fantastic games and fantastic sets. I'm also really interested to see how these teams are going to operate against each other. And we'll find out here in Picks and Bans. For Game 1, Warriors will be the first pick. Team Dragons over on the other side. And they do ban the Honor first.
Unlucky, man. Wow. Look at them all. Like, what? Like, now what do we do? Jokes aside, I do think that the Jade Dragons have plenty of other picks in the back pocket, but they don't want to deal with that dual lane pressure, and the Jade Dragons are going to rebuttal. Maybe if we see 6 Hunter bans, imagine the duo. Like, what?
Man, imagine the tweets we're gonna see from the Hunter player.
That's also true. We're not gonna see it though. Poseidon ban, which is something we would expect. Morrigan Le Fay, still one of those top tier solo lane picks, but Nika in particular has looked fantastic on this Poseidon, so I can see why the Oni Warriors do not want that going over to his hands.
And same thing for the Khepri. That's like a genetics bread and butter pick, to the point where I think Genetics has even gone and said that he's like, yeah, I played Yemoja, Khepri, and that's my 2 gods that I get to play. Those are the 2 I'm allowed to play. And we'll see if they get banned out. It's also easy bans for the Dragons. Yemoja's pretty simple first pick, can change a whole lot. Ullr is an interesting one to me, but mainly because it feels like there's 3 players on the Warriors who are willing to play it at any given time.
Yep.
And the 2 most likely aren't in the duo lane. It's Pegon and SOT, I feel like, will go to it more often than not. The same reason you want to get rid of a Chernobog, that global presence. And an Athena ban as well for a global presence. So a couple of globals taken off the board. You still got the Opwash. You still got your Yemoja, your Raijin, your Maman. Like, where do you go, Charlie?
If you're the Oni Warriors, I would think the Outwash is definitely on your mind. SOT has the propensity to go towards it, but Yemoja's just so impactful. I mean, Genetics has a lot of gods that he likes to try and control the pace with. You could just go none of them and try and get 2 strong picks after the Jade Dragons.
Maman,
and I think that's going to be the call. Grab yourself the Maman, which is still very impactful in its own right, but then you get to see what the Jade Dragons go for and sort of devise a counter strategy. That's what I was expecting. The Outwash still so highly contested. I believe 100% pick ban rate, and for good reason. Just controls so much of that solo lane. But with the Maman coming through, you got to watch out for that burst damage. She has been shown so much of just like explosive damage late game. Not so much get in, get out damage. It's more so just get in, right? You are doing that damage and you're probably dying, but hey, if you can get kills, that's going to work just fine, and that's Panitom's bread and butter as well.
Go in, trade 1 for 1, but also you put 2 or 3 people down at 30%, your team's going to clean up. Yeah, it's the perfect spot to be in. And one of the coolest ultimate names, Explosion of Souls, is just really sick. It is matched, as you had mentioned, by that Puch. And the Camazotz, which is something that specifically the Dragons feels like they've been going to pretty often. And I believe of his games and of his wins, it's mostly them who have been able to pick it up and find that success. But it feels like nobody else is picking him up. Do you like seeing Camazotz this early when like there's not really been a contest around him?
I don't mind the Camazotz. It's just something that the Jade Dragons find safety in, right? LASBRA can always... He's got good early game. He's got good late game. He's safe. You're almost never out of position with Bat Out of Hell available. Sure, you got to make sure you hit every one of your abilities. That can be extremely impactful. But besides that, it's just a good look. And then it also opens up the door for Dardez to go to the Morrigan if he wants to. That being said, though, we talked about pressure, and we talked about, you know, plenty of gods still being available. The Jade Dragons can only pick 2. So the Raijin, probably for the solo lane, but still could be played in mid. And then, of course, the Izanami. That is surprising no one. That's just pressure over in the duo lane, and Netrioid will take it whenever he can.
For someone who is just accused of pressure crutching, not, you know, I'm a little, I don't know if I want to say disappointed. I don't think the word's surprised. I'm not entirely sure what the emotion is that they go to the Izanami. Maybe they're playing into it, Charlie. But at the same time, the Izanami has also been really kind to them. Raijin has been really kind to them. And so no worries, I think, overall for the Warriors as of their top 3 are locked in. Dragons, this one's going to be interesting. Rom has been really kind to Coast. And it's been outside of Cherno and Ullr, the only hunter he has played. He's looking to change that. Locks in the Hachi towards the end. And Charlie, you can call me, well, I was going to say wrong or a whole bunch of names if you want, but realistically, I feel like the Warriors, Maman, Raijin, feel like they came out a little bit ahead, at least in terms of like tier list.
Yeah, I would say that's fair to say. I think the Jade Dragons got what they wanted, though. You know, it's not as if this isn't a draft the Jade Dragons aren't happy with. They wanted the Outwash, they definitely wanted the Hachi, and the Camazotz is something LASBRA is like, but the Raijin and the Maman are definitely more so top of the tier list, and the Iza is just a Netrioid flavor pick, right? He enjoys...
That's good for him.
He enjoys clearing waves, and he can do that very quickly on the Iza. With that being said, though, we talked about this Maman interaction a bit ago. I believe in the King set, we talked about how if Chernobog ults away, she can hop in and, you know, fly with you the whole way to the other side of the map. But an interaction that I've seen a few times in my games, with the Camazotz in particular, a lot of these globals or semi-globals or gods that can go up into the air, they've got a charge up time where you can go, ooh, I don't want to travel with you. I'm going to jump out. Camazotz is instant, and if you go up in the air, she can't eject. And Camazotz can say, okay, guys, I got a Maman, I caught her, let's go, and bring him all the way back to your team, and you can try and do some counterplay there. It's not easy to pull off, especially in a pro league match, but something that could look to be done for here for LASBRA.
Do you like the idea, like, so for Hachi, let's say he's a little, you know, I'm not accusing Coast of anything, but let's just say in a scenario, he's a little out of position, maybe too far forward.
A little too far forward.
Maman dashes into him.
Yeah.
Do you like the idea of him just ulting to his team and like riding the horse to get as much distance and bring her over there?
Well, see, that's the thing, though. If Panitom is paying attention, he could just jump out, but not with Camazotz. Camazotz is in the sky, so it's a little bit.
It's still going to take you a little bit of time to get out.
I mean, yeah.
It's like 10 units is still 10 units, Trevor. That's what I'm saying, right?
That is true. You could bring the squad
I just want to see silly interactions with Maman.
No, I agree.
Ymir, Charon get banned out by the Dragons. The Morrigan and Kukulkan banned out by the Warriors, and so it's a Morrigan Lefay, presumably for mid, although we've seen Dardez play Puch, I believe, so that one's definitely going to be swappable. And they might honestly, and Trelly, this is something we talked about a little bit towards the end of the phase, But it felt like if Raijin was locked in, someone was going to go Morrigan Le Fay, and that Morrigan Le Fay was going to do her damnedest to follow Raijin to wherever lane he was going. If it was solo, Morrigan Le Fay solo. If it was mid, he's going mid just to make sure that that could match up.
I think that's probably the case here. I mean, I'm surprised that the Morrigan Le Fay wasn't banned away, but when you look at the fact that Puch is already locked in, and the fact that the Cuckoo and the Morrigan were available, it starts to make a little bit more sense, right? You see how much, you know, actual pressure was there, and wow, the tier locked in does mean the tier support comes back. Tier and Iza, I mean, you don't really have to worry about clear when you've got the Iza. That should provide a fair bit of pressure. The Oni Warriors, always keeping us guessing.
I'm going to be honest. Flabbergasted a little bit, but we've seen both of these. It's just yesterday we saw them all in the same set. So Ares locked in here. And we'll focus in on him first. So Raijin, definitely going to be decently safe. Like Tier should be mostly safe. But how do you feel about the Ares lock into the rest of the Warriors?
It was a pick that I think the Jade Dragons were holding on to. Fantastic matchup into the Iza, into the Tier. You just got to hit chains, and we know Mike can do that. So I'm a big fan of the Ares pick. Not something you want to go to early on in the draft. It's more so something you want to bait the Oni Warriors into. But it's all about survivability. Is the Ares going to be tanky enough to get the ults off? Is he going to be tanky enough to, you know, hit these chains and run you down? And if he does, your duo lane might just be over, right? Like, you only get one set of beads on this Iza, and it's very easy to just sort of, you know, camp that duo lane. If he falls behind, though, if Mike doesn't get pressure, if he doesn't have enough tank stats to exist as this immobile support, that's where the trouble can emerge.
The pressure's going to be on. Now, I do want to ask, and this is just because predictions are always fun. So Tiamat, Raijin, it feels like Tiamat mid, Raijin solo, right? So that one tends to make a little more sense, but Sot has also played Tiamat, I believe, in the past, so it could flop. Nika feels like the Morrigan Le Fay, and I know we, you know, in the past we've talked about liking Morrigan Le Fay matchup into the Raijin. So who do you see playing what as far as these mages go?
Yeah, I don't think Pegon's gonna take Raijin. I just don't think that's his game style anymore.
My man's will dash into your speed buff on a Raijin.
I've seen him play Raijin. His team has seen him play Raijin, and they're like, bro, you dash in too much. You can't have the Raijin. So I like the idea of Sot taking it and just giving the Tiamat back over to Pegon. As far as solo lane goes, I prefer a tanky Puch to the tanky Morrigan Le Fay. She has so much self-peel where she doesn't necessarily need those tank stats, whereas Puch, we've seen how easy it can be to just camp an Puch, right? He gets one set of beads or one set of Aegis from level 1 to 12, and you could gank him many times in that meantime. So if I had to choose, I would say, yeah, throw Puch into solo, build him up tanky, but at this point, Nika has been playing so well on the Morrigan Le Fay. You almost can't go wrong.
They could just play the cup game, right, and just swap wherever they end up going. I'm also really curious to watch the duo lane, primarily because, like you said, you know, hit your chains. This tier is going to have a lot more trouble. Late game, though, when you're in these team fights, like how much are you going to find? We saw, what, a 4-man tier ult yesterday over the wall. Little things like that where you can find a lot of surprises from this god. And so that's a better question. We see a lot of meta picks here. Camazotz, Ares, you know, Camazotz has been kind to the Dragons. Izanami is out of the meta, but has been kind to the Warriors. So it's really the tier and maybe the Ares. Like, is that just a counter matchup that you want the Ares in? Do you think the tier is going to look good into the Dragons? Like, where do those fit into the puzzle piece?
Yeah, I've got no doubt that the Jade Dragons were holding on to that Ares pick in case the Iza, in case the tier came out. That's the matchup you want to pick it into. It's not necessarily, like I said, if Ares gets behind, Iza can just pop her stim and shred. But early on, the chains really do hurt. No escape really does hurt. And of course, what is tier going to do? You can't cast any of your fearlesses when those chains are on you as well. So that was just a counter pick there from the Jade Dragons they were holding on to. And as for the Oni Warriors, sure, the Iza and the tier are on top of the tier list for duo lane, but they can win early. They can get pressure. They can clear waves, and that's what the Oni Warriors like to do. So I think it's just, as you said, picks that both teams feel confident on, they feel comfortable on, and they knew they were not going to get banned away.
It is. Hey, you know what? There's no way they're going to take my tier away from me. It is really fun to watch, though, and I think theorize, because like you said, Iza tier, outside of Mike just being an absolute monster and setting up Coast for something insane, more than likely they're going to be pressed up pretty hard. Camazotz decent at ganking. You know, we actually, as you had mentioned, I've been thinking of it because Dardez played it so much the first day, but Maman for Panitom, that feels like an interesting gank kind of dichotomy, right? Camazotz versus Maman, it feels like Camazotz gets online a little earlier and maybe can provide more. Do you see him being able, LASBRA being able to alleviate some pressure from his duo lane because he might have an advantage early?
He certainly can, but it's difficult, right? You always have to watch out for Panitom. He's one of the best junglers in the league for a reason. This Maman has so much explosive 1v1, especially with that Spirit Seize. If she jumps inside, she can, instantly cancel it and auto-attack you, or hang out there while you flounder around, miss some abilities, that sort of thing. So I assume LASBRA is going to play his normal style, where he goes for counter ganks, he hides around the jungle, goes behind you, sneaks around. That's kind of the way he likes to play, but don't be fooled. He will be around Nika. That much is for sure. The solo lane is where the Jade Dragons like to play as well.
Watch the right side of the map.
Yep.
Watch the left side of the map. Watch the mid portion of the map. It
Just
just feels
watch
like,
the whole
just watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because anything can happen. Again, between these two teams, winner of this set gets a choice of opponent at Worlds. The loser just gets whoever's left. We'll see who's going to take it all, but it all starts here. It's game one, and it's Frog and Inbound.
Thank you so much, Gormizer and Trelly on the desk. Oni Warriors, Jade Dragons. Winner of this game goes to Worlds. Loser of this game also goes to Worlds. They're both headed there, Seed 3 or Seed 4. You've got Frog, you've got Inbound, you've got Doug taking us through the battleground here. In Inbound, I want to talk about the compositions because I am still not necessarily sold on this tier support, and Genetics keeps locking it in. He locked it in yesterday, and I thought it was going to go to him, right? It went to Sot instead, right? He baited us a little bit. Locked it in the day before, and they won that game, but that was maybe the Fine OK Invade game, which I'm not sure was
Do we
won.
count it as a win?
Well, I'm not sure it was won by the Genetics support on tier per se. But this game, no invade attempts, and we'll hold that, right?
Well,
gotta wait.
We got a little bit of time to decide.
Gotta wait for 10 seconds. But assuming no invade attempts, we're finally going to see this Genetics tier support unperturbed at its full glory.
And it's going to be a difficult game for him to play it into. I mean, a lot of these characters are going to be very hard to hit that Fearless on. Morrigan, a lot of self-peel. Kemba has that instant immune jump and ultimate. Ares can lock him down and is also knock him immune in that Flames. So this is going to be a pretty big test for him. I don't think it was the most valuable tier game, but for the most part, dual lane should be won. We've seen this Izanami with Tainted before from Netrioid. It's very hard to lane against. He's very tanky. He clears waves well. But I mean, you're playing this tier into that counter matchup Ares lane where if he ever hits chains, your entire kit is basically nullified. I am a little worried with how much he's going to be able to get done. I think this is going to be a very difficult game for him. But he locked it in, seeing most of this draft by the Dragons. It's really just that Ares that was locked in after.
Feeling a bit of confidence on this pick, to be sure, and I think unsurprising, we would expect that lane to get pressure. We'll have to see around that second buff spawn where the junglers end up, maybe at the shield camp, if they do want to try and put some additional pressure over, look for some buff invades as to where Panitom ends up. But then these mages as well, they were mentioning it on the desk, right? This Morrigan Le Fay paired with the Opwash. On the other side, you get two mages as well. And we thought we might see the MLF versus the Raijin, as that might be the favored matchup there. Instead, ends up being the Opwash going up against the Raijin on that right-hand side. It's a little bit of extra pressure for that Raijin into the Opwash, or would you rather have had the Morrigan Le Fay over there?
Yeah, it's just a slight advantage for that Morrigan Le Fay, or for that Raijin. A little bit of pressure over here on the left. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of damage left.
Wow. I mean,
Maybe I'm
the
wrong.
slowdown, the body blocks Mike under more pressure than he was expecting. Looks like he will make it out of there with a surviving health bar, though. That got a lot closer than I expected.
Yeah, me too. And Genetics still looking to bully out. And this is kind of how you have to play that tier. You want to play to bully, because the tier from behind is a lot less useful. Actually, a gank in the right lane, and Nika goes down to that damage. Aegis was just used, but just too much burst by Solo and Panitom there.
Genetics is walking under this tier 1 tower, just sort of calling the bluff here, walks under for free. But you're right, that first blood over towards the Oni Warriors. Pressure on the left side of the map and pressure forced by Panitom on that right side of the map as they'll take down Nika for first blood, and they still might be able to push this left buff invader or shield camp, right? And then my question goes to LASBRA. If they have pressure on both the side lanes, what are you doing with that jungle space that LASBRA has? Looks like he'll invade the enemy speed instead.
Yeah, LASBRA seems to like to opt to go for the speed buff when both side lanes are losing, and at this point, there's really not a great opportunity for him to make a play in either lane. Mike is sitting very squishy on duo side, and on the other side, Nika, no Aegis available, still only level 4, so neither really fightable. Actually, Mike might go down here.
Gotta be careful there, off the mark with the chains. And he saw Genetics in the camera for just a second, talking a little bit of trash. They do get that second kill over on the left side. Meanwhile, LASBRA just stealing camps left and right. He stole that speed in the back. Looks like he'll steal the purple as well. Doug, did he steal that speed in the left and just leave one minion up? Is that because that buff is still... No, okay. I thought he was going to be a little... That would have been a little bit too toxic for me.
That would have been a little something.
Just to leave one minion up. Ultimate dropped on the right-hand side where Panitom continues to put that pressure down, and despite a lot of damage, I mean, Nika's been under a lot of pressure on this side lane early on.
Yeah, it seems like Panitom has established that solo lane is the side he wants to play towards, and Genetics is going to kind of act like a pseudo-jungler on duo side of the map. This tier, not a traditional support. There's not a ton of, you know, normal Guardian stuff, good peel, something like that. He's basically playing to be a nuisance right now and just try to slow down the Jade Dragons dual lane from farming as much as possible. I wouldn't be too surprised if you see him start walking towards those back camps, getting that deep vision, because he's playing to, you know, get this lead and to actually punish as much as he can, because this tier will fall off in that late game.
Yeah, especially as a warrior support in general, but this tier maybe more than others. Ultimate down from Netrioid, trying to force VaporishCoast, but I mean, this is the type of pressure you have, just holding the wave a little bit, calling the bluff of the Jade Dragons, saying you can either stand there and lose some farm, or you can push up and fight us. And I'm not sure they're willing to have the fight just yet. I mean, 5 minutes in, right? This is maybe the pace that you are looking for the Oni Warriors to set. Already about a 1,500 gold lead. And my question, like, for the Jade Dragons, where do you want to draw that line in the sand? Is it this next round of buff invades that you need to get LASBRA involved in, or are you okay waiting a little bit longer and letting your guys getting to, you know, 1-2 items maybe?
Well, it seems like he needs to start making a play soon, and a little 3v3 is breaking out on the right side.
Wow, LASBRA does come over for the invade. He might get punished for it, though, forced into the bat of hell, and will make it out of there alive, as does SoloOrTroll. Luckily, though, makes the space for the blue buff to be secured by Nika, and will just back off and secure his own blue buff. So at the very least, he walks over, helps his team secure his own blue buff. You're right, though. Nika coming over for the damage, but off the mark with the abilities. SoloOrTroll playing with fire a little bit. Nika finally grabs his blue buff.
Yeah, Nika confirming that blue buff. Mike actually looking to pressure out this red, hits the chain. Unable to get either of the buffs. Fortunately for the Warriors, they confirm both. But that fight on the right side, this Opwash with this Pythag spike at this point, he is something you really have to be wary of, because that ultimate covers a lot of area, and it's also going to be doing a lot of damage. And Solo was sitting in it a little bit too long and took too much damage. So blue buff confirmed for the Jade Dragons. And you were talking about, where do I want to see them kind of make that stand? I think that is a perfect time to make it. You're getting spikes out of everyone. You got the book on your Morrigan, Jotun's on your jungler, Pythag's on your solo laner. So you have these item spikes allowing you to defend that blue buff. And now giving that blue buff over to Nika gives him a little bit more farm. And it's more about that farm than the blue buff. You're not really worried about mana issues on Opwash, especially with that Vamp Shroud. But just getting that farm, kind of trying to slow down the game, keeping you in a good spot. I think that's a good play. And Mike even now trying to bully out on those backs.
And trying to stay aggressive. Might get punished here, though. Dash in, and Ares forced to run the other way. PolarBearMike falls. 3rd kill now for the Oni Warriors. And Panitom's got one. Pegon's got one. Netrioid's got one. There's a kill on all of these carries for the Warriors. You can't ask for a much better start.
No, this is the start you want when you're playing this Oni Warriors comp also. That Izanami, that tier, that duo lane for the Warriors is not going to be something that scales as well as the Hachiman, as the Ares, even though Ares is kind of considered like a warrior guardian. A little bit of a tussle here.
Gotta be careful if you're
That's dash.
LASBRA. It's the dash early. Panitom forced into that CC immunity, but the damage comes through, and Dardez grabs the first one for the Dragons. LASBRA a little bit low, and Genetics in the vicinity, but might be a fight over on the right side as Nika takes all 4 of the drums. Genetics not there in time, though, to follow up, so the fight will fizzle out, I think, just before this blue buff spawns.
Looks like 4 strong by the Dragons. Want to make sure they get this blue buff again. 3-man group done it. Dardez walks back mid. And I think if I'm Dardez, I'm wanting to just try to get farm as much as possible. I'm not worried too much about that blue buff. Because we've seen from Dardez this entire weekend, if he gets that farm online, he will carry these games.
He has been more farm-oriented, but with these rotations coming through, especially around the soul lane, and with how active these supports have been, I thought it might just be Genetics, but I mean, PBM dying in the enemy jungle, being there to try and steal some of those buffs away. Perhaps this is part of the reason why you get the Ares pick. You don't necessarily have to be a warrior support to try and be aggressive in particular. But I think, I mean, going back to these supports, Genetics build catches my eye a little bit. This round shield as that second item. I mean, I don't think I've ever considered of
the double fearless.
Goodness, the blinking double fearless. VaporishCoast forced into the ultimate and will make it under the tier 1 tower. Genetics gets pulled back, but no kills will fall. That came out of nowhere, and that's just what the tier brings.
Yeah, that's that tier playmaking potential. Blink is available, and he's going to be looking for it. Fortunately, does not get that kill, does not pull relics onto Coast either, and Coast ends up living. Plays it very, very well. Panitom actually blinks onto Mike. Mike's got nothing here. He's just dead.
He's got to be careful, and he was not careful.
He was not careful.
No, he thought he might have been safe around that purple buff, but does fall another kill to the Oni Warriors. And wanted to talk, I mean, that's 0-3 for Mike on this area. Still only a level down, but I mean, regardless, we've talked about this before, Guardian versus Warrior, those base stats are going to help you out a lot.
Yeah, base stats for sure will be helping him, but I mean, when you're already 0-3 and he's kind of been looking to keep playing aggressive, when you're falling behind on Ares, yes, you still have like that kind of somewhat protection base from the Guardian's base stats, but it's still just a very easy god to kill. Not a lot of safety in a dash or something that can kind of sprint you away from a situation. He also goes for the aggressive relic with that blink. And he's now sitting down 2 levels to Genetics. Genetics is really putting out and throwing his weight around on this tier.
And we talked about pressure crutchers in the interview.
We did.
2 levels there for both of the dual lane members briefly, Genetics and Netrioid. This Izanami has really kept up that pressure on the left-hand side. And LASBRA, once again, maybe just content to farm a little bit and make sure he's on time for these blue buff invades. And if that's the lane that you want to put things around, sure, you can be there for the blue buff invade. That's the same time that the Gold Fury's going down here, though. And the Oni Warriors maybe conditioning LASBRA a little bit. Right as soon as that blue buff spawns, they go over to the Gold Fury, get it for free.
It's just a free Gold Fury and a free purple buff, so more than just the purple or Gold Fury for blue buff almost trade, because they've been putting so much pressure onto that blue buff. They also confirmed the purple buff. So far, early portion of this game, kind of just all Warriors. Yeah, a couple plays. Dardez gets that 1 kill onto Panitom when Panitom was in their jungle. But outside of this, it just seems like the Warriors are the ones starting these fights, and the Warriors are the ones confirming a lot of these kills also.
Yeah, I think where I was going with it, like LASBRA has a lot of focus towards that right-hand side, and sure enough, you're helping out Nika, who has not fallen behind here, still even with the Raijin on the other side. But if you're going to put this pressure in the solo lane, maybe you're asking when you want to start seeing those rotations, perhaps for the next Gold Fury, but you gotta be careful here if you're Nika. There's 3 Oni Warriors members here on the right-hand side, and pushed up against the locker. Genetics takes down the kill, and they shut down Nika.
And one of the things that Netrioid does really well is when there's a solo lane play being made, he will happily give up the pressure on the left side of the map. He's up a level and a half, almost 2 levels over here, but he's just happy to kind of let Coast push up to his tower, and he'll just soak it as it comes under. That's something that a lot of ADCs kind of make that mistake with, where plays being made on one side, and you try to match it on the other, and you get punished for it. But Beacon spawns, 12 minutes, little fight here.
Oni Warriors take that tower on the right-hand side. It's a man advantage there in the mid lane. So it will be Beacon to the Jade Dragons. That's maybe the only semblance of pressure that they've got, though, is in that middle lane. And even then, Dardez, maybe behind a little bit, has lost out on that first bastion. So Pegon been quietly farming over here in the mid lane with that early kill he was able to get. But now Genetics, I mean, they've gotten the left lane pressure. Netrioid's over there. He's got a 1.5 level lead. He is an Izanami that does not really have to be worried about it necessarily. And now, blue buff respawning. They shut down Nika once. Nika's still with both relics down for the next 10 seconds, and Genetics is just being a nuisance. And I have to say, like, that's why you have to pick the tier.
Yeah, I mean, that's the entire reason to pick it. You want to pull these relics. You want to kind of throw your weight around early. And with all these relics getting pulled by Panitom, Solo, whoever it is, Genetics needs to be the one that is there and that is punishing those relics being down, because that's the value of the tier. The ability to kind of just confirm kills for free on somebody that does not have relics. And when you pair it with this Maman, tier gives all the CC you need. Maman brings all the damage, so it's a really good pairing on the dive. And even now, you see Genetics just bullying LASBRA out of his own jungle.
SoloOrTroll with the rotation over to the left-hand side. They trade ultimates there. LASBRA, using the Bat out of Hell, has to force it in. Dardez, maybe under some pressure as well. This is an early rotation, it feels like, for SoloOrTroll, but he's finished up those 3 items. That's both defense items online. Might try to turn something around. They've got to be careful if you're the Oni Warriors. Sot gets out, but he might be pulled back in. Good beads will save him from that fate. But with the Gold Fury in just 30 or 45 seconds or so, that's a good relic burn from the Dragons.
Yeah, good relic burn. Now they have an opportunity to take down Solo. I think that is a little bit of a weird rotation there by Solo. There's really nothing that you're able to get unless you're pushing down that middle tower. And it didn't seem like middle tower was even in their sights. It seemed like just walking into the enemy jungle is what they preferred. So now, SoloOrTroll rotating back right, trying to get that right wave pushed out. Seems like the Warriors are trying to set up for this Pyro. Net's already rotated over here. 4 or 5 strong here, and the Dragons are not going to answer.
In position for it are the Warriors, and as you mentioned, nobody from the Jade Dragons willing to step up. This would be crazy. 14 minutes, edging on 15, and they're looking for the Fire Giant. Might just be the bait, though, as PBM is in with the blink. LASBRA on the other side of the fight, and in with the damage, taking a lot of the focus is PBM, but LASBRA is on the backside alone, and now the carries are in. Dardez looking for some damage, and SoloOrTroll has to leave the fight. Look for Costo. The dash and the stun burns the beads off of Netrioid. So they try to fool the Fire Giant. LASBRA, no, gives away his life for an attempt on Sot's life. They bait the Fire Giant. They do end up getting one.
Yeah, I was going to say, a little bit of a weird Fire Giant pull with no frenzy. There's very low opportunity unless nobody by the Dragon shows up for the last minute. But with that play on the right side, the Dragons have a free opportunity for this gold.
Looks like they will head over towards it, and I'm not sure anybody from the Oni Warriors can get there in time. So the Dragons take advantage, use that opportunity. And I was going to ask pacing-wise, right? We knew that they would be involved early. Good knock up there from Dardez will keep him away from the Fearlesses. VaporishCoast, got to be careful, has to make sure that he makes it out, has to use the ultimate. It's a little bit more than I expected, get the blink off of Panitom. But I mean, for pacing-wise, right, we were very happy with the early game. They've got this extremely aggressive draft. They controlled the sides of the map pretty well. At this 16-minute mark, leading into that 20-minute mark, and maybe the respawn of these next couple of objectives, is this a gold lead that you're happy with if you're the Warriors? Have you accomplished your early game goals?
Yeah, I think this is a comfortable spot to be in. I think you still have an opportunity to push this even more, get deeper wards, play for the back camps, play for the reds, the purples, and also get this tier 1 tower down and left. Towers have a lot of gold in them, and if you can get those towers earlier before the even Fire Giant gets threatened, because a lot of the times we see these early Fire Giants, it's on the basis of having like a Frenzy and a Bracer. As you can see on the Warrior side, it's Beads, Aegis, and Blink. Those are the only 3 relics everyone on their team has. So that's what they have. They have these really good combat relics, not really PvE relics. So something to pay attention to is maybe something more for towers, something more for team fights, and less around the Fire Giant.
Yeah, Genetics is almost a jungler here. Like
yeah.
He has Blink Beads. He is the same level as LASBRA. on the other side, just trying to make things happen. You have to imagine that might make the front line of the Oni Warriors a little bit more squishy. We talk about problems when you go double mage here in the solo support. It's not. It's mage and warrior, but if you've got third item Winged Blade, hold that thought though, Quost may be under some pressure here. That ultimate just barely down and about to come back up. They've got to be careful for this rotation. Panitom can't stick around too much longer on this left-hand side. I think they want to make sure that Netrioid continues to get a little bit of help, especially you mentioned that tier 1 tower, but it's a big grouping by the Dragons on the air.
Yeah, it seems like even Nika's rotated over. Now we're 5 strong, and Solo's still pushing down right. Nika does reset. Looks like he's going to go answer right. And with that play in left, it looked like they were just trying to bully out Coast to play for this tower. Fortunately for the Dragons, they see it, and they rotate a bunch of people over, and that seems why Nika rotated. Now 2 strong. Tower's going to be going down here.
Yeah, they do look for the push. They will find it successfully. Hard to stop an Izanami from pushing even when she's by herself. But at this point, you get a level 17 Izanami on the map, taking down the tier 1 tower, and it's a huge lead for the Oni Warriors, not only in gold, which we talked about a couple of times, 7,000 almost, but also experience heavily in their favor. 2 levels for Solo, 3 levels in the jungle, a level at least everywhere else, but I'm looking at 3 levels in the support role as well. Genetics has been doing a ton of work farming throughout this map, and it's going to lead them to yet another objective. Pyromancer goes down, and a Runic Bomb now in the pocket of Genetics. Have to feel like a lot of this pressure is being pushed by this tier support. I mean, when does this sort of playstyle fall off? If you're the Dragons, what time period are you trying to make it to?
I mean, the Dragons kind of want to push this to like 25, 26 minimum. I think when it comes to objectives, I think Tier has a slightly harder time because he's very blink reliant. Coast actually playing up a little bit. Panitom's stun is still available, but Coast ults out.
Wow, that was a lot of damage from
Dardez?
the ultimate. Dardez on the rotation over. Panitom cannot continue the chase, has to leave instead. Still, you burn a couple of ultimates there. 3 on the side of the Warriors down. That includes Pegon's jump, of course, but 2 on the side of the Dragons. That's right before this Oni Fury spawns as well.
Yeah, and bullying out indeed. And with this big XP, this gold lead, the Warriors still kind of need to keep pushing this lead. They shouldn't be happy. I mean, yes, 8,000 is good, but there's still a lot of plays on the map available for the Dragons. A lot of split push potential. You don't have great objective burn if you're on the Warriors. So something for trade opportunities for the Dragons is always going to be there. With SoloOrTroll pushing down right side, 4 strong on the left for the Warriors, and this entire time still, Oni Fury's up, tier 2 towers up, a lot of gold available.
Jade Dragons, looks like they are going to give this one away yet again. Can't step up to it. And I mean, I keep going back to this level lead, right? You've got 2 levels now in the jungle, but that's 4 levels in support. That is a level 12 PolarBearMike. He just now has gotten that second relic online, has grabbed the bracer for his squad, but he's still not going to have that upgraded starter for another 3 levels here. I mean, it really feels like it's slowing down any potential aggression you could be getting from Mike, but that's not to say, I mean, they have to step up to this Fire Giant if they want to defend, and PBM, he's level 13. How can you step up here? But they've got 4 members in close. They're going to try and steal it away.
Dragons.
They do! They take the Fire Giant away, and Genetics still trying to put the damage down, but they're looking to trade it out and make room for the rest of the Warriors. A 4-man ultimate grabs 2, but Panitom grabs Dardez, and Mike will fall as well. A 2 for Fire Giant trade for the Dragons.
And not the worst play there for the Dragons. Yes, a couple go down, but Fire Giant on 3, 2 tier 2 towers, 2 towers in the left lane for Coast. Also kind of slows down this gold lead a little bit. Yes, they're going to be losing their right tower, but anything to kind of slow down this game is going to be very beneficial for the Jade Dragons. And with pushing down right here, not really an opportunity to siege unless they get a kill.
They tried to slow things down by taking this Fire Giant, but not going to slow down the siege. Panitom, Netrioid hitting this bird. Nika trying to stand in front. Panitom gets punished, but the Phoenix will go down, as will Netrioid. And SoloOrTroll on the dash in as Nika's looking to take the 1v1 versus Pegon. Such low health bars, and we'll find the double kill as Zot The low health bar from him as well will get punished. 4 fall for the Oni Warriors, but they get that right bird.
If LASBRA just backs, they defend that without actually losing it, but LASBRA greeds out the farm in the left lane, and then they actually end up giving up that Phoenix. And when you don't have Fire Giant on the Warriors, that is a good trade. If you have Fire Giant on 3 or something like that, and you're trading it for that Phoenix, it's a little less worth, but you didn't have Fire Giant. This was the Dragons having the advantage with Fire on 3, and you're the one that comes out with that Fire Giant. Really, I mean, good macro by the Warriors, but just a bad answer by the Dragons.
LASBRA potentially thinking about how he might have been able to defend there, right? But with that Phoenix down, have to answer the question of what you still want to get if you're the Jade Dragons. They still have the Fire Giant around their waist for another couple of minutes here. This Pyromancer will at least be an answer here. They grab that tier 1 in left, as you mentioned. They grab those towers in left as well during the entire steal attempt. And a lot of gold does get answered back. You're absolutely right. Look at those charts. That drop down has been massive for the Jade Dragons. Only 1,200 now separate these two teams. And I think if you're the Dragons, you get that back. You get the experience lead back. People are starting to hit level 20, right? You don't have to be as worried about those deficits. And you feel a lot more comfortable in getting ready to step up to these next couple of objectives.
You were talking Mike 3 levels away from getting that next starter. He finishes it about a minute and a half later with just getting that advantage at Fire Giant. So big for them. Mike is now able to actually do stuff in this fight and not just kind of sit back and just become fodder for the enemy team. And along with that starter, he's also getting that Bracer upgraded. So now Mike, even at this point down 2 levels, is just as useful in the fights as Genetics is.
Well, Genetics, I'm once again going back to that tankiness answer, right? He has 2 of those daggers in the build, right? As well as a solo item in that Glad Shield potentially. And so I'm not sure he's as tanky as Mike, even from 2 levels ahead. But we'll hold that thought. LASBRA under some pressure here. Pegon is behind the entirety of the Dragons, and Genetics is looking for the engage. BBM with a 2-man ultimate pulls nobody back, but look at Pegon. He comes in from the backside, and Panitom's looking for some damage as well. Mike will fall. Nika looking to fall down as well. They trade 1 back, but LASBRA might be the saving grace. He gets SoloOrTroll, needs 1 more to even out the fight. Looking to just survive at this point. It's Pegon by himself, pushes the rest of the Dragons out.
Ends up being a 2 for 2 there. It looks really good for the Warriors there, but Pegon had no abilities after chasing out LASBRA, kind of bullying him out a little bit. Fortunately, though, not able to get anything really done in those fights. And it seems like this tier, I mean, still a lot of plays being made by Genetics. Yes, he is a Warrior. He will be falling off, but he's still happy to ult in there and look for the all-in onto Mike. Seems like if maybe Netrioid is a little bit farther into that build, maybe there's more threat onto Mike. But as is, Net's not really threatening Mike all too much.
He's got this build, finishes out with that Titan's Bane. Still everybody looking to sell those recipes, except for the solo lane SoloOrTroll does have that last item finished out. But I mean, so far, the gold lead pretty much evened up here. 3,000 gold, not sure I'm really caring about it at 25, 26 minutes in. And as we reach that 26-minute point, this was where you mentioned the Jade Dragons were looking to make it here. And so, have to ask about the team fights, right? 5-on-5s around this next Fire Giant. You've scaled a little bit to maybe where you want to be if you're the Dragons. What are they looking for to this next team fight?
Still not EFG, so it's not an end-of-the-world miss here. You want to make sure you get that right Phoenix up, which they mostly have. They have 1 more Fire Wave to worry about. But you're still down like a little bit. You're still about 6 items deep on the Warrior side, and on the Dragon side, only sitting about 5. So this is still not a fight where you're just, we have to take it, we cannot lose here. This is still something you can play a little bit slower, maybe play for poke a little bit, and if you win the poke trade, maybe you look for the all-in. But we've seen this 1v1 before. This is not a winnable 1v1 for the most part for Maman. That's one that really benefits Camazotz. Really good poke endure, and then you also have that really good all-in potential and can avoid a lot of her damage.
The damage comes out quick for the Camazotz. You've seen that before. I think Panitom has to be aware of that. He's got quick damage too. He's really the only player that's been building this Polynomicon on the Maman, so has some quick damage in his own right. We could see that 1v1. As it is now though, Oni Warriors with the positioning around this Fire Giant. And at 27 minutes, they don't want to contest this. They don't want to bait it. They're just trying to catch the Dragons out. You gotta be careful. LASBRA here finds himself behind the entirety of the enemy team right there. Will not get caught by that dash for SoloOrTroll, but this Pyromancer spawns, I think likely to go down for free. Surprised it's not just a standard Fire Giant bait. Instead, they're looking for picks.
Dragon's not too comfortable with their ability to do Fire Giant right now. No Frenzy, no Sustain outside of, you know, Typhons or innate Lifesteal. So not going to be easy Fire Giants. Genix looking to zone right now as the rest of the team is doing fire.
He's walking in up against the 5, and the Fire Giant is falling down low. The Warriors secure it this time around. The Jade Dragons on the chase. LASBRA up front, and PBM with an ultimate grabs nobody because of the beads. Pegon
no
has
relics
to try and dash away, but no relics available. Will find the gray screen, and Nika gets the last hit on that one. But good zoning from Genetics at least grabs them the fire.
A really good chase out there by the Jade Dragons, at least getting something, you know, for losing that Fire Giant. Pull those beads, those relics both down on Pegon, and you also have beads now down on Genetics for at least a little bit. Going to be slowing down this Fire Giant. Now, if you're sitting here, if you're the Warriors, you have regular Fire Giant on 4. You don't have that true tank that we've talked about. We've kind of beat into the ground that this tier is not a normal support. This is not something that builds full defense. It doesn't tank a bunch. It's kind of like a weird zoner, almost a jungler at some points, at least in the early game, where it kind of just plays to slow down the enemy team. And when it's more 5-on-5, when there's no jungle you can kind of wrap around, it makes these sieges a lot harder. And it seems like the Warriors are kind of not ready to start pushing right now. They want to get some deeper vision, kind of wait for Pegon to get alive. Now you have Fire Giant on 4. Pegon doesn't have it. No relics on Pegon.
Well, I mean, if they can't engage with this tier, how does this siege look to go? Are you trying to catch the Dragons out in the jungle, perhaps? I mean, LASBRA is, I mean, we've got to keep an eye on him, make sure he doesn't accidentally run into 4 Warriors players here, as he's deep in the enemy jungle. This still is not enhanced Fire Giant, but you're going to have some Oni waves. You're going to have at least a couple of shots at this. Still one tier 2 tower left up there. Are you full on trying to push down a Phoenix, even so, with this tough siege composition?
I don't think you are. I think you're just going to try to play to get this last tier 1 tower in left. And maybe SoloOrTroll or Panitom can look for a pick in mid and win that 2v2 in mid, because this is a pretty unwinnable left-hand fight. I mean, you have good poke, yes, but you don't have the ability to kind of create a lot of space. Not like that Puch can. Raijin has to stay mid, kind of try to push that out. Raijin actually looking to go right, which I actually think this is their best opportunity. Raijin with his Fire Giant has decent opportunity to actually go for that Phoenix.
Could try to split push here. They've got the Oni waves pushing in left, in mid, in right, as well as these Tiamat minions, if those two pose a threat to that Phoenix. The Jade Dragons have to be careful they do not get caught out on a bit of macro play here. They're going to have to be defending all 3 Phoenixes simultaneously as the Warriors try to split around and take the advantage on this lowered Phoenix, right? Has respawned, but not back to full HP, and will not make it back to full HP. The Oni waves came and went, and they didn't even find an engage.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough siege for them. This is not free by any means. This is going to be actually very difficult. LASBRA actually gets chunked.
Wow, lots of damage coming through, and SoloOrTroll will be forced into the ultimate all the while. The left side, they try to find an engage of their own, but that ultimate coming through from Nika forces them out for the time being, as PBM almost by himself continues to slow down that siege on the right-hand side, and now ultimate economy goes down a little bit. You lose it from Pegon, you lose it from SoloOrTroll, you lose a couple on the side of the Dragons as well, as the Oni Warriors just constant pressure outside of the birds.
Fire Giant is dropping soon. So it's either this push or nothing. This is what the Warriors have to look for. Yes, they can still play for that EFG.
Blinking from Genetics on the left-hand side, and a simultaneous engagement there on the right, but that space is all you needed if you're Netrioid. Panitom,
and right.
He's trying to survive and will not be successful. Meanwhile, they get the right bird as well. They force the Dragons to split, to choose a side to defend, and the Dragons lose both side lane Phoenixes because of it. In fact, Dardez has to be careful here. Sot burning the ultimate. They might try to punish him as he's looking for the escape. Now watch LASBRA on the wraparound deep into the enemy jungle. SOT, this dash is coming up in a couple of seconds, but they're still going to try and chase this one down. The temporal beads bring the dash back up, and SOT will survive.
And this Raijin just has so much cooldown potential. The safety from him with how many dashes he has is through the roof, but with this Fire Giant spawning, this is an EFG, and Panitom is still down for 15. Also looking at the relic situation, not great for the Dragons, and looking pretty good for the Warriors outside of Solo's beads.
These ultimates close to coming back up for everybody here. Dardez, he was defending those Phoenixes, but now coming back to the Fire Giant, it's clear the Jade Dragons want to stand tall here. They have to make this play around the EFG. So far, they'll start with the Pyromancer. I thought they might have just hopped on it initially, but instead, they were looking for a pick. They couldn't find one onto SOT, and now they've got to back off, concede pressure onto that EFG.
They got to get these waves pushed out now, and when you push those waves, you show on the waves, which gives the Warriors an opportunity to either look for a pick or look for this Fire Giant. But that Fire Giant, as you can see with that bracer, is still warded. So the Dragons know it's not been pulled yet. It looks like they understand the Warriors want to play for picks. That Fire Giant burn is not great, but the pick potential is insane.
Yeah, I mean, 50% of the Fire Giants so far have been stolen in this game, right? And that's a pretty fun stat.
That is.
Half of them have been stolen. Genetics and SOT looking for the engage. Fine PBM, and the silence there delays the ultimate. He only pulls back in one. Pegon, he jumps in on his lonesome, and he'll trade out for Mike. You lose 1 for 1, but the mid lane are down for the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, Mike is taking any 1-for-1 trade right now and celebrating. Yes, left is shoving down a little bit, so there's a little bit of an opening for the Warriors, but keep in mind, they do not burn this.
Don't burn this very fast. They're 4 onto it, and the LASBRA, VaporishCoast, they know about it as this Ring of Fire spawns. Looks like they're going to stay around it. All the while, though, nobody is defending these waves. You've got a left-hand minion wave, a right-hand minion wave as well. And once again, the Warriors pick up the Fire Giant.
Dardez shows
the response. Dardez is not going to be here. Nika, though, doesn't have ultimate either. And they grab the Fearless around the wall. Nika is knocked up and will fall down. Netrioid grabs the Soul Laner. And these picks are good for the Oni Warriors. They're just trying to force the bait. As LASBRA, taking a ton of damage, will find his way out with the Bat to Hell. But that's enough space and an EFG for the Warriors.
Solo, no beads available or ult. I was curious to see if Mike was actually going to be able to find him with that blink, but he had no ult available. EFG on 5. Pegon spawns back. With the 2 outer Phoenixes down, the Warriors are just rushing it right now.
Got to find this Phoenix preferably while Nika is still on the gray screen. 30 seconds before that op wash is back and available. And you've got a group. Mike off the mark with the ultimate. Hits nobody. While a couple of beads were down there. Pegon still no relics. And they've got to back off and give away that mid-Phoenix. You get the ultimate trade from Dardez, but this Titan is so low, it's just a full commit onto it, and the Oni Warriors take game 1.
And, I mean, this could have been a lot faster with how much that early game was going in favor of the Warriors. That if you don't steal that 1 Fire Giant and get a couple wins there for the Dragons, we're talking about probably a much faster game. And you saw when you get to those 5v5s, the Warriors can't really burn the objectives, but the Dragons just kept walking up. They kept getting close enough to get engaged on, and Genetics was finding some pretty insane engages.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with how the Warriors played their composition, to be completely honest. I think that you pick the tier, and you have these innate weaknesses of that kind of support. You have these innate weaknesses of your kind of like inability to siege traditionally, necessarily, and the Warriors just are as patient as they possibly could be. They don't shred the Fire Giant, so they sit and wait for a pick. They don't shred at a bird, so they sit and they wait and they play macro and try and direct the Dragon's focus. And if you're going to be perfect on those kind of playstyles, I don't even mind the tier support as much as I thought I would.
Yeah, I mean, you get Fire Giant for 4 minutes. They sat around for 3.5 minutes before actually looking for the siege, and then they get both outer Phoenixes with that. So really good macro by the Warriors.
The Oni Warriors take game number 1. Jade Dragons will have to look to answer back in game number 2. Stick around after the break.
That's right, advanced.gg/smite, and you can go get yourself a shaker, and of course the new flavor, Cthulhu's Dream, the raspberry acai flavor that is rocking the world. It will, I want to say, drive you mad, because that's like Cthulhu's whole thing, so I'm going to say
that checks out.
It'll drive you mad. It looks fantastic. The shaker looks amazing. Pretty much anything Cthulhu brand is gonna just look cool, so that already I think was set up. But the flavor's delicious. The cup is amazing. So make sure you're going to advanced.gg/smite. And I believe you can use right now code SMITE30 for some discounts there. So if you're really looking for it, you wanted that cup, you wanted some flavors, now's the best time to do it while the weekend's going on. But if you're looking for discounts, the Warriors aren't giving them, right?
No,
they are taking wins wherever they can find them. Maybe the discount was on the other side. A really lopsided team fight, really lopsided gold count for a majority of that game. Stolen Fire Giant for the Dragons keeps things interesting, but the Warriors, they had their hand on the ball.
Yeah, the Warriors were pretty dominant in this set, or this game so far. It seems like the tier actually created a lot of space, a lot of pressure, so props to Genetics for making that one work. You'd think with the Jade Dragons holding on to that Ares counter pick that it would be, a little bit more difficult to pilot. Sure, the chains hurt, but at the end of the day, Genetics was able to engage you. You're able to use that ultimate to stun, and then you can't channel the flames, anything like that. And it was just a lot of CC into Fearless into Dead, and that's kind of what got the Oni Warriors their early lead. And they just, besides the Fire Giant steal where it was a bit dodgy, they really never let go of it from there. So I really did like not only what the dual lane was able to do, but of course, Panitom on Maman doing so much damage. Sot had some very interesting plays as well on this Raijin, not only finding just insane DPS, but also the fears, the taunts from this Taiko drums was able to set up so much for the team. You're going to see more often than not when he goes in that ult, look at this, taunting 2 back in as opposed to going for the damage. He's just setting up for his team, and it ended up working out so well. So the Oni Warriors, when you look at this composition through and through, it seems like they got a lot of what they would want. Might have to look to take away, whether it's the Raijin, whether it's the... It feels so bad banning the tier, considering the Jade Dragons already banned, I believe, 4 Guardians, and still the tier played that well. But if you don't have answers for it, you got to figure out something else.
When you get rid of the Athena, the Ymir, the Khepri, and insert the 4th one here, Yemoja, assuredly, right? Tier still looking that good means that the Warriors have, well, guess what? Genetics God Pool behind them, and it has been the case. We saw that a lot on the Kings. You go back to last year. Throughout the year, while Genetics was playing with them, it would not be uncommon for the top 3 bans to be Genetic bans, and then the bottom 2 bans to be Genetics bans. He'd eat all 5, you'd go deep into the Guardian pool, and then he'd still be able to pull out like a Terra or something, and just absolutely ruin your day. So that's something that maybe the Dragons are going to have to address or try to figure out. Because the Ares did not work the way they wanted. And Trelly, you highlighted it perfectly. It's not necessarily on the Ares. It's just the CC that the Ares was playing into. He never really got to see the tier first. It was always locked down. And then the tier showed up. We'll see how that changes here in Game 2. Warriors will remain first pick. And they will remain banning on her up at the very top, limiting the Dragons' duo lane as much as they can.
Yep, still running back.
Izanami.
Yeah, still running back that on her. More hunters being focused at. I like that ban as well. I mean, the Jade Dragons, they want to have Coast just to get off to a good start, which I think Coast had a pretty decent performance anyways in the Hachi. But the Iza just insta-clears buffs, insta-clears waves, make sure that you can really never fight early on. And that's kind of how the Oni Warriors like to get ahead, right? They get Genetics a bit of a lead. He's able to run around. He's able to be annoying. So whether it was the tier or the Iza, they decided to go with the Iza this time around, which I think makes sense. It's not like Genetics isn't going to be able to set up for his team on many different picks, but there's only a handful of ADCs that get you that much pressure just from, locking them in.
Depending on what the Warriors ban here, it's going to be the Opwash. So I'm going to ask this before the Dragons get theirs in. Do you like the idea of skipping Cherno, letting the Warriors have Cherno, and then getting Maman Khepri?
It's possible. I haven't been too impressed with Dardez on the Maman. Like, he does great things, but I'm going to keep saying it. Maman's a jungler, man. She's not a mid laner. You can get your pressure. It's fine. Like, there is 1v1, and yes, you can clear the wave and then go pilot her as a jungler, which is what mid laners do anyways. but I like it much better if LASBRA was to take it, and since he hasn't really shown us it yet, I don't like the idea of gambling with the Maman there. And the Chernobog can just be so impactful. So it looks like, yeah, they're not going to give that one over to Panitom. And I think that makes a little bit more sense. Of course, you still have to deal with things like Yemoja, Chernobog. But if you don't have an answer for Panitom, changing him up, making Netrioid, making Panitom play something new, there's benefit to that.
It also means solo lane-wise, Raijin has also been towards the top. Cherno
For sure.
has gone a little above him each time, but that priority changes team to team. At least a little bit, right? Teensy little bit. But that means that whichever one the Warriors grab, the Dragons are going to be able to grab two that are probably going to look phenomenal for them. And so it's just, what's the best of the best? I think a lot of people would agree. You can nerf a lot about Cherno. But that ultimate, man, like just being able to change the numbers game, it just seems to make him head and toe above everybody else.
Yeah, I like this. The Raijin's impactful for sure, but there are just so few answers to Chernobog split push late game, and the Oni Warriors know how to use it to its fullest extent. So, makes sense to me. We'll see if the Jade Dragons even value that Raijin pick. Seems like they don't, and I can see that as well. You know, it's not as if Raijin doesn't create a lot in the team fight, but I've been highlighting it. Nika on the Morrigan Le Fay, Nika on the Poseidon, just built a little different. So I can see why they are just giving that Raijin back over Yemoja. And of course the Yemoja was going to be the top three there. So once again, gotta dial it back. The Oni Warriors got everything they wanted. There's no doubt about it. The Jade Dragons, they've got the ability to pick Camazotz here, but I didn't love the Camazotz from LASBRA last game. He was bottom of the damage, below PBM on the Ares for, I want to say, the first 20 minutes. He just couldn't get anything rolling. 2 Camazotzes is great, but you got to see it LASBRA get active early. If the Jade Dragons want to succeed, he needs some sort of pressure, and the Camazotz did not provide it. So just because the Morrigan is there, I could see them going back towards it, but not my favorite look.
Realistically, I feel like the Morrigan, like, you've got Chernobog on the other side. That's Dardez's way of saying, look, not only am I great at this pick, but also I can Cherno rotate now. Maybe that can alleviate some of the pressure, at least in solo lane ganks. But we'll have to watch what he's gonna do with that one, and what this jungle pick is gonna be. If they even go for a jungle pick, I mean, this would be a pretty easy slide in, grab a ROM or something like that for Coast. Just let him be comfortable. You're not too worried about it, and see what you can have. Do you like? That's actually a good question. Do you like ROM matchup against Chernobog? Like, does that have anything going for either side?
I mean, I saw Coast pop off in that same exact matchup yesterday up against Yarkor, so I could see them going towards it, but I don't think you need to prioritize it. I'm amazed that it's the Sobek. Like, don't get me wrong, I like Sobek, but it didn't need to be grabbed here. Maybe, okay, if the Jade Dragons don't know what the rest of the Oni Warriors composition is, that's the value of picking Sobek there, right? They're like, okay, maybe we go like Susano for a double Susano, maybe we look to the Camazotz anyways, but we don't know. So we're not going to, lock ourselves into a jungle pick, not going to lock ourselves into a duo lane pick. And actually, Jade Dragons are going to ban away the Susano, so they couldn't go for it even if they wanted to, which clearly they didn't. They're going to take that one away. They just want to see the rest of this draft go through. Still, if you're asking me to lean one way or another, I am heavily, almost knocked over how far I'm leaning towards the Oni Warriors.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you, Charlie. It's really hard to argue against Cherno, Raijin, Yemoja. That's such a great top three that I don't even think I blame you. It's like, they walked in and you've got some, like, 2-pound weights on the Dragons, and the Warriors have 100-pound weights on their side. Like, the scales are going to be in their favor pretty heavily unless something dramatically changes draft-wise. Play-wise changes a whole lot. Heimdallr, something we haven't seen this weekend. We call it all reliable when Zapman pulls it out, because it feels like he only pulls it out when things have gotten tried and true and he needs something that he can rely on. But go further beyond and behind that, Trelly. For a lot of the EU SEC, especially last year, going into this year, but the last 2 years, I would say, Season 9, Season 8, Heimdallr was like for some reason, it was the carry god. It was first pick. It was the thing that if certain players had it, that game was won. And so Coast has it in the pocket.
Certainly does.
He also stays safe.
Yep, and that's something that, yeah, Coast has been playing for quite some time. Hasn't played recently, but definitely has been, has that in the back pocket. The Oni Warriors have options here. The Chernobog usually goes to Pegon, but can definitely go over towards Netrioid as well, depending on how the Oni Warriors want to play. I noticed the Ullr is still available if Pegon wants to take that and then just send the Cherno over to duo lane. And that's exactly what they're going to hover. The Thor would be interesting as well. I mean, I love seeing Panitom on the Thor, and they are going to lock that one in. This is a nasty late game, and yeah, they don't even have to hesitate. Think about the global. Sure, you're giving Dardez the access to that same, those same ultimates. But man, you got double ADC, you got plenty of magical damage with the Raijin and the Yemoja, and you got Thor, Yemoja for initiation. I feel like a broken record, but man, Oni Warriors, they know what they're doing here.
Yeah, this draft is just strong on their part. It's going to be Daji on the other side, though. And Charlie, that creates an interesting dynamic for the Warriors. Do you think the Daji specifically for LASBRA? I know you had said you didn't like the Camazotz. That had gotten banned out anyway. Double Daji is really what I'm looking at when I see the Morrigan on this team as well. That feels like beads, are incredibly important, but even when your ultimates are down, if your ultimates are down, like, that's going to cause a lot of trouble, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of CC from the Dragons.
So, Gore, we used to be in what I'd call a Daji meta. She was end-all, be-all, the best jungler in the game. And now we have Magi's Shelter, we have Absolution, we have Temporal Beat. Like, there are just so many ways to get out of Daji's ultimate. That's the reason that she's not the best god in the game anymore.
Yeah.
Sure, her damage fell off, and, you have to worry about 1v1 potential and things like that, but all it takes is one person on the Oni Warriors to get Absolution, say, oh no, they got Ullr's beads, they got Yemoja's beads, we're guaranteed to get pulled in. No, not anymore. That's not the case anymore. You got Magi's Shelter, you have Absolution, you got beads. There's so many different ways to not get pulled back by Palau. Doesn't mean it's a bad pick. Daji's damage is still ridiculous. It's not as if the Palau is the only thing she brings to the table. It's just a lot harder. You know how you fix that? You get 2 Dajis. The Jade Dragons said, hey, now we got 2 of them. Maybe you Absolution the first one, and maybe you beads the second one, but we're going to get you eventually. We have enough cooldown. That seems to be the game plan for the Jade Dragons. They've got benefits of having the beats down. They've got Through the Realms. They've got Heimdallr. They've got Sobek Pluck. There are ways to benefit from beads being down, but I see Chernobog, Raijin, Ullr, Yemoja on one team. That's pretty scary.
I will, and much to your point, when it comes to pulling beads, I think we have to give some credit and sprinkle it over onto Dardez's name. Not just because of the transformation, but yesterday would just invis, walk up, stun, and force beads out of people on the Kings. And so there's definitely a dynamic there where I think the Dragons can find success. But like you said, it's not just, okay, yes, they can find success. It's like the road they're going on. Warriors, with their draft, it feels like a really well-paved road. The Dragons are walking through a path that nobody's walked on in 10 years, and they're trying to kind of meander their way through the woods, it feels like.
Yeah, and I guess we didn't really discuss I said Pegon would take the Ullr. It's not as if Sod and Pegon couldn't trade. But as far as I'm concerned, Pegon is banned from playing Raijin. It's not because he's bad at Raijin. It's because he's way too aggressive, and you don't build the tank stats to back up that play style. So as much as the Oni Warriors don't like to repeat picks, as much as Sot probably doesn't want to take the Raijin, I think, just leave it the way it was.
He doesn't dash responsibly. We'll see whether or not he's going to be playing the Raijin or not here as we jump into Game 2 with a 1-0 lead for the Warriors.
Thank you so much, Gormizer and Trelly. Game number 2. Right around the corner, Oni Warriors looking to put themselves on set point. Dragons looking to fight back, and my eyes immediately go towards Pegon on the Raijin. It's Frog, it's inbound, it's Doug, bringing to the action. And I really like Gore's quote, man. That was fun. He does not dash responsibly. And I'm not sure he wants to dash responsibly. He wants to be feeling aggressive on this pick.
Yeah. Pegon,
you don't sound impressed at all.
Whenever I see Pegon on the Raijin, he is a fantastic player, but he's just so overly aggressive. A lot of the time, he just gets punished for it. Wow, 81% for the Warriors.
That's pretty heavily favored. Wow, I mean, you look at the double chalice Ullr. Man, I was gonna point us totally in a different direction, but you're right. That's a double chalice Ullr. from SoloOrTroll. There's some fun things to talk about with this Oni Warriors draft. I wasn't even going to talk about either of those picks. I was going to say, man, last game, Yemoja was up and available, not picked, not banned, and Genetics chose Tier. That has to mean that Tier's better than Yemoja, right? And the Tier was up this game.
Yeah, Tier was up this game. This game he goes for the Yemoja. I don't know why he's not picking the top tier god. Top tier god? I suck.
Good.
But anyway.
That's good. That's quality.
Yemoja, I mean, I think the reason Yemoja wasn't prioed last game comes down to that op wash. It is one of the hardest matchups to play into. He controls more area than you do. He counters a lot of your kit and makes it just very hard to play. And he wanted to play through pressure in that lane. And if we want to talk about pressure quick in this 2v2, both teams kind of opting for really mellow lanes. Yemoja's a fine laner, yes. Sobek's a fine laner, yes. But both of these ADCs are really defensive, really play it slow, just try to farm it up. Compared to last game, I mean, or what they want to play. I mean, Izanami's, Ullr's, kind of a complete switch up from what we've seen from both of these teams. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, especially with the shield camps, the purple buffs. Are there going to be invades, or will the teams kind of play more towards that solo side of the map, or for these mid camps?
Jungle matchup is interesting as well. Panitom has played 3 gods this weekend, quite literally. I believe he's only played the Athena, the Maman, and this Thor has been gone back to a couple times. And he's had good games and also mediocre games on it, but goes back to it once again here. And we'll have to see where he decides to put that global pressure. But already, over towards this left side, over on this shield camp, don't think Mike has a real attempt in terms of the steal here. You're right, this duo pressure is a bit interesting when it comes down to this matchup because it's been, I mean, Heim and Sobek both not really that popular, but do provide quite a bit of kill pressure in the lane, especially with that pluck.
Yeah, pluck, and then on top of that, you don't have the safety of the healing and the shielding because he opts for that onk. Pegon getting a little aggressive in mid. I was worried that a little double tap there would actually result in a kill, but actually a fight mid.
Wow, dash in, no LASBRA.
The damage.
Will find a little bit more damage and grabs first blood.
He's low on mana.
Onto Pegon. Panitom looking to trade one back. Careful on the double tap.
He's out of mana.
He's out of mana, but he's got maybe enough for the 3. And LASBRA looking to get away and will find the dash. Panitom, though, these camps are close to coming back up. He's
chasing him.
Still chasing him through. And the double tap just barely out of range there. Now really out of mana if you're Panitom. That'll be first blood for the Dragons.
Maybe we're talking about a different story if Panitom has that eye. Also, that base movement speed you get from the levels gives LASBRA just enough to get away from Panitom. And this entire time on the left side of the map, Genetics kind of just harassing Mike and harassing these back camps, these green buffs. Pegon already here, but the green buff dropped wisely by Mike. He's still not pulled it.
Looking, oh, he secures it.
Oh, he got it.
Yeah, he got it. Let's go. PBM gets his own green buff. And we saw Genetics doing this last game on the tier, right? No surprise. We saw PBM try to do this as well on the Ares, and I think when he found himself 4 levels down, harder to do that. Gets pulled back in. Pegon forced to use the beads, and that is as soon as, I think literally like 10 seconds after he hits level 5, LASBRA goes in, pulls the beads off of it, and now we're going back to what the desk talks about, this Morrigan ult, and you get potential to a lot of beads burn potential between these 3 characters right there on the left mids.
Yeah, so no surprise Mike's already looking to rotate mid just to see if maybe somebody walks around the corner, Pegon walks around the corner, can actually look to punish him. 2 minutes now down on the Raijin beads, but he does have the ultimate available this entire time. 3 on the left side, maybe a fight looking to break out on the Genetics.
Jungler's over here, Panitom being chased, and Genetics gets plucked back and sent through the realms. He'll land, and LASBRA's looking for the dash. Needs a little bit more damage, but should fall for the second kill. Netrioid as well. Has to be careful, but a good double dash there will keep him alive. That's now 2 kills onto LASBRA.
And LASBRA kind of controlling this early portion of the game. And he still has that ultimate available to maybe look for a play on Pegon in mid. I mean, already completely different game comparatively to last. We have the Dragons picking a little bit more pressure across the board. I don't think it's drastically more. But on the opposite side, the Warriors going from a near full pressure comp into the super defensive, farm it out type of style comp. But you heard it on the desk. Charlie mentioned it. if this comp goes late, there's a lot of value across the board on the Warriors.
Yemoja can come through with the walls, right? You also get, I think, SoloOrTroll on this Ullr, maybe one that we should get back to a little bit. We've seen it a couple times, really the only one playing it these days in that solo lane, and we talked a little bit about that double chalice start coming through from him. I thought that we might see LASBRA there over on this side. And it looks like we will see a little bit of an invade attempt, right, as this blue buff spawns, but I mean, if you're looking towards a mage solo, we've talked about how those can potentially be focused out. Are you kind of thinking the same idea behind this Ullr solo, the hunter build here?
Yeah, I think it'll be like full damage Ullr. And actually, Solo still hasn't even gotten his back off, so he has really no damage to confirm the blue buff, but he does get it. Axes to get him out. Pegon looking to rotate over slowly.
Wow, does get here, LASBRA into the pal out early. And Panitom looking for the dunk. I think a little bit hesitant there, given the low health, though. Pegon may have had the follow-up, but Dardez is here, and he's on the transformation dash through, and you've got the LASBRA damage here. Dardez finishes it off, the tick damage, and that's where you get the Morrigan value. The transformation and the kill is instant there from Dardez.
I mean, we already see Dardez putting out pressure on this Morrigan. He got that Doom Orb, and he just sprinted into the enemy jungle and bullied out Pegon. That's kind of the difference in these builds for the mid laners. Pegon goes for that Book of Thoth, but one of the few mid laners that can go for that Doom Orb, the Morrigan, makes really good use of the movement speed, the pen, and LASBRA looking to bully out Genetics. Genetics not a ton of Omi right now.
Yeah, has to make his way out safely, and we'll find Panitom in the jungle. At least we'll find a little bit of that bastion of safety. But he did steal the green buff this time around, which is just absolutely massive. That being said, the Dragons get the enemy red buff and the enemy speed buff, and also it looked like the totem camp. So they came out okay. They got some of the enemy camps.
Genetics did get the green though, so like maybe a huge win that side for Genetics. On the opposite side, not as big of a win, especially when talking about this difference in the mid lane so far. I mean, I think that's where I'm looking the most. Whenever we talk about Dardez, I think the Morrigan is one of the few gods that you really think of when you consider him. And this weekend alone, I think every character he's been really good on, but he takes it to another level when he's playing on this Morrigan. The playmaking potential, the ability to pull relics, transforming into a tank, an assassin, whatever the front line or whatever the team needs. And when he's got a 2-level lead right now.
Yeah, and for me, he has so many transformation options on these squads. You get both the jungle ultimates to come through, you get some global potential, you can even have the walls from Yemoja if you really want them. I mean, if you, in these late game team fights, or maybe even the mid game, right? Gold Fury close to maybe being contested here around 8 minutes. Where do you expect to see him transforming?
I want to see him continuously turn into this Daji. I think it's one of the best combos in the game. One pulls relic, one kills after, and we see just the burst damage that he has onto Pegon already. It's not like instant burst damage, but it's over like a second.
Blue buff looking for
Pluck on
the
Solo.
pressure here. Pluck on his Solo, and the
wall.
knockup's there, but the wall gets a triple stun, and SoloOrTroll trying to make it out of there. The bleed is enough, and LASBRA grabs the kill onto the Ullr, a killing spree for the Daji. On the other side, though, Netrioid's got to be careful. The beads get burned, and VaporishCoast has the pressure on this left-hand side. You get a kill onto LASBRA, you burn the beads as well for the ADC, and Mike's continuing the pressure. But those relics being down, I mean, that's eyes for LASBRA to continue up this pressure on all sides of the map.
Yeah, and Mike is so far looking to play on the solo side of the map, and Genetics is just trying to farm it out. Hasn't really been trying to make too many plays. 0-1-0, and Mike on the other side, a part of 2 of the 4 kills the Dragons have. And this is kind of the big difference between the Yemoja and a lot of other Guardians. Yemoja's not a great early game character. She's pretty self-sufficient. She's got some strengths, but for the most part, you compare her to a god like Sobek. Sobek has a lot more tankiness, playmaking potential, survivability in the form of healing and protections, and then he also just has really good fights and low cooldown ultimate. And then Yemoja, the other side, some semblance of CC, a little bit of healing, some walls with her 3, and then the walls in the ultimate, but just really long cooldowns. She kind of needs to get those levels online to be able to spam a little bit more. And you compare just where they are in their builds right now. We have a full Thebes. for the past almost 3 minutes for Mike, and just right now, Genetics is still trying to work on that Thebes.
In last game, we saw a pretty big deficit experience-wise between these supports. You get Tier, who was 3-level lead, 4-level lead at times, versus Ares from Mike. This time around, not a huge experience deficit, maybe a half level here and there for Mike, and if he of course feeling a little bit tankier there with that finished Thebes, but hold that thought for a second. A max range ultimate there. And look at this follow-up. Everybody is ready on the landing, and Genetics has no shot of surviving. VaporishCoast grabs the enemy support. That's going to open up the window, thought maybe for the Gold Fury. They had 3 members around it. They decided not to go for it.
Decided to play it a little bit slower, try to get some deeper vision. Mike wards up that green buff, wards up the purple buff also. Gets the vision on the back camps. And so far we've seen kind of this no beads Yemoja get punished a couple times. She opts for this meditation. While late game, the cooldown resets and a lot of that will feel very valuable. This early portion into the Sobek, who also has this Onk and then anti-heal in his 3, it is a very hard time to play this Yemoja, so don't expect a lot of plays by Genetics until that later portions of the game. And as you're talking about, Gold Fury looks to be pulled by the Jade Dragons.
This might be the opportunity here, but the Oni Warriors waiting in the wings. Want to try and slow this one down. Panitom, a little bit of poke, and immediately the Dragons say, nope, okay, they're here. We want to be a little bit more careful. So it won't be a free pull, but it might be a fight here. 3 versus 3 on the left-hand side. Wall now down and out of Omi. If you're Genetics, but just barely. A little bit of distance there, he gets away. So LASBRA not able to dive onto the support there. I mean, if you're the Jade Dragons, right, you have a similar lead perhaps to where the Oni Warriors did, maybe a little bit lower, but around that 3K mark. What is the optimal time here? You looking to start a Gold Fury pretty soon, try and find a fight around there?
Yeah, the problem with their comp is they don't really have great objective potential. They don't have great secure either with this Morrigan in mid. They have really good 5v5s, but when you play for these 5v5s and you can't really go for the objectives, it's on the enemy to kind of walk into the jungle and get picked, and that's really what most of this is. It's picks. That's what the Jade Dragons are getting. Yes, they're getting some buffs here and there, but for the most part, no massive win yet. We have every tier 1 tower available. They just confirmed the beacon, so that's like their first pretty big win. But gold is up, Pyro spawning soon, and I think that's what I'm looking for first, this Pyro. It's a lot easier, it's a lot less risky because there's no permanent buff for the side of the Warriors if they do steal that away. And it's spawning very soon. You also can get Nika involved here, because if you look at the solo lane builds, Nika's in a more powerful spot for these fights around Pyro. And then worst comes to worst, if Chernobog does ult over, you can disengage pretty safely. There's no big risk there.
I mean, if you're fighting over on the Pyromancer, though, still going to have to wait about a minute and a half before that one looks to spawn. You see a small grouping, maybe looking on the left-hand side. It's a dash in from LASBRA, and onto the damage here. Genetics and Netrioid paired together, trading the damage back out. But the chains pull Genetics back in, and the pluck. Panitom here is on the follow-up. He misses the dunk, and it's there with the double tap. He goes in, and now has no escape potential. He beads his own supports. Riptide. He will make it out of there, though, under the tier 1 tower. I just can't stop thinking about if he hits that dunk.
Yeah, missing that dunk changes that fight astronomically. You also see Genetics kind of baiting it a little bit, trying to set up the fight to get Panitom to hit that massive ult. He does not take as much damage as probably the Dragons were expecting. That big wall blocking a lot of the autos, and I think that's something we can look at in these early mid-style fights. When you're playing with this auto attacker, actually a little fight on the side.
Oh my gosh, VaporishCoast tries to find the 1v1, and he is out of there just as soon as he... Oh my god, VaporishCoast! The Penta Kid gets the solo kill, and Dardez was even there for the help if he needed it. What a confidence play from the Dragons ADC.
The timing on the auto was perfect, and... Wait, Dardez about to... Okay, it was close. Maybe another 2 comes up, you get it killed, but the timing on that auto attack to confirm on the Chernobog ult was perfect. It was perfect.
under some pressure here. Yeah, I mean, you time it exactly as he comes in on the landing. I'm not even sure it would have mattered, even if he does miss the auto. We do have a replay, though, and I really do want to see it back because VaporishCoast hits everything that's cancelable. He gets the Aegis off, and then he sees the Cherno coming through. Oh, wow. That's pretty. The timing is perfect, and it brings the Dragons even more pressure. They grab the Pyromancer as the first objective.
And the Dragons kind of got a nice little lead right now, 3,500 gold, but it's stalemated a little bit. We're talking about 3,000 gold. I mean, 2,500 gold at 7 minutes. We've only got about 1,000 gold more in the past 8 minutes. So we need to see the Jade Dragons start to push this a little bit more, whether towers, whether gold furies. And when we talk about how this Dragons team wants to fight around these objectives, they want to take the fights. They don't have great confirm. Their burn isn't great. The setup is a little on left side, but they have really good ways to get these fights started. They pull relics, and then Mike can punish with plucks, or Dardez can rotate over with that Chernobog, which we've seen before.
I mean, they've got some item power spikes coming through here as well. I mean, this to me screams like the time that you want to force this gold for. You want to force a fight if you're the Dragons. Sure enough, they're grouped up deep in the enemy jungle. PBM and LASBRA hanging out over on that left-hand side. They get the pings that come out. This might be the Gold Fury question. You've got 4 people here. Nika heading his way over right now. They might try to cut him off in the jungle, but even if they do, I mean, this is still the Gold Fury answer. You've got to shut down Nika if you want anything. And the Jade Dragons, they secure the Gold Fury. And Nika will lose his life in trade, but you're taking that all day.
Yeah, that is a good trade. Unfortunately, Nika on the rotation is punished, but a 1 for Gold Fury at this point in the game is going to be worth it as long as you don't lose anything else. But it actually seems like you did lose something else on the right side of the map. They actually lost their Tier 1, so a Tier 1 and Nika for just the Gold Fury makes it about an even trade for the Warriors.
I'm looking at this experience lead as well. And it's gotten cut quite a bit. You have an experience lead for Panitom. On the other side, he's got a level lead. And a level lead as well for Genetics, who's 12 to 11 up. I mean, really, the only experience leads you have for the Dragons are coming through on the carries, but those can be significant. Dardez has been a level ahead pretty much the entirety of the game. And a little bit of a differential here in the mid builds. And I want to ask you about, are you expecting this Soul Gem from the Raijin over the Ob Shard on the other side?
It's just a Pegon special. He just likes this item, the extra survivability. Gives you a little bit extra damage in squishier 1v1s, so if he's getting dove by the Daji, the Morrigan, the Heim, he will trade out a little bit better. Just his poke on the Sobek will be a little bit lower. And then on the opposite side, Dardez has that threat onto Genetics, who went for that double stacking build. So he's still kind of ramping up. He's not too strong right now. I mean, only 8 stacks at 18 minutes is a little wild. He's going to need to get those a little bit quicker. But, I mean, if we talk about how fast gods can stack them, once you group up around those objectives, you toss out a bunch of Yemoja ones, it's pretty easy to get stacks on it there. Just seems like he's stacking it a little slower so far.
It was really difficult for Genetics to survive some of those all-in engagements early on in this one. I think you can see that come through in that second relic choice. Opts to go for the beads, wants to make sure that he's feeling a little bit safer, and will even add to that safety as he finishes up the prophetic cloak. But maybe a little bit of pressure here as it's Panitom continuing to throw out those walls. And I'm a little bit surprised that we have not seen Panitom be a more active. If anything, it's been LASBRA who's been finding a little bit more action on those ganks. But with this semi-global from Panitom, with the global as well from Netrioid, you would expect them to be finding a few more advantaged fights across the map.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, especially with the potential to kill Nika in solo lane. It's not like duo lane Tier 1 tower is that big of a trade, or Gold Fury is even available right now. Actually gets his invis caught.
Oh, and he's caught. Oh, thought that would have been an engage. He was caught between the wall and a hard place. And it's right as the Pyromancer spawns in here. Looking at the relics, everything available here except for that bracer from Mike, so they won't have that additional objective damage coming through. But right as the Pyromancer spawns, looks like the Jade Dragons a bit hesitant to pick that one up. They've got all 5 here, so I think we'll find the confidence, just maybe waiting for that opportunity. The missed pluck gets beads off of Panitom. I think that should secure them, the Pyromancer, unless Solo
Solo
walks in and takes it. The Jade Dragons thought they had the secure. They all back off.
They walked away. Confirm the buff and then walk away. Why are we walking away early? They're greeting that farm, and SoloOrTroll punishes them for it. And who else but Solo? Like, who else has the confidence and like the not worry to kind of go up and make a play like that? Because if he gets plucked, there's very good chance he loses beads and then gets punished after.
Pegon, he got plucked in the mid lane, and gotta be careful of Coast coming around that side. Thought he might have utilized that ultimate, but it's LASBRA forcing down this pressure. Only a tier 1 tower standing in the way of the Dragons, and it will not be for long as that objective falls. And the Oni Warriors, compared to the pressure that they had in game number 1, have been struggling to find a way in here.
Yeah, so far this has been a pretty early game lead for the Dragons, but it's just about evened up at this point. I mean, 1,000 gold at 20 minutes is near irrelevant, especially when you're looking at the late game of this Warriors. I mean, there's a point that's coming very soon where this Warriors comp hits that late game. I mean, level 15 on genetics is a really big spike. The Bluestone on SoloOrTroll, the Pendulum also on Pegon, and then Netrioid finishing his Cowl. All of these are going to be massive spikes. And you look at the opposite side, there's really not that same level of massive spikes. Yes, Pendulum on the Morrigan is going to be huge, but Deathtoll, not a massive level 20 starter. That's more for the early game. Looking at solo lane, the build is going to stay the same mostly. It's just heavily sustain, a little bit of damage, a little bit of survivability. I guess the survivability maybe goes up a little bit, but trying to survive into a comp that has as much damage as this Warriors comp is not going to be easy.
I mean, that maybe is added to by the shell here. Nika going that second defensive relic, and now the Dragons have a total of 3 of those support relics on their squad compared to the 1 on the other side.
Yeah, and speaking on the shell, this is a good point to bring up. Into Yemoja, you need 2 relics. You need Shell and you need Ankh. Usually it's the support that opts to go both because they're kind of just needed and they're the only ones that can really go for it. But this game, because Nika's going to be playing more backline and he's also going to be needing that Phantom, he opts for the Phantom and allows Mike to go that other support starter, gets that Bracer, which will help them burn those objectives if they do get a lead or if they do just get a small opening. Because you compare it to the other side, again, the Warriors, no Frenzy, no Bracer, so their objective burn isn't going to be that great, even if they have double Hunters. Their Secure should still out-secure the Dragons, but we've seen even Cuckoo ults miss-secure sometimes. Secure matters a lot, but all it takes is 500 health and an objective is lost.
Once upon a time, we even saw Poseidon ult miss-secure on an objective.
Oh, we can't do that.
I didn't.
We can't do that.
I was just speaking about the facts. I'm just saying, secure's not guaranteed. You're right to bring it up. He does upgrade to the Phantom Shell right as we're talking about it, so now preparing for these fights to get going. We talked a lot about the scaling for the Warriors draft. Jade Dragons maybe don't have any of those huge spikes on the other side, but I mean, they're going to group up, have to 5v5 in this team fight. What does that engage and ensuing fight look for them?
A lot of the times when we see the Dragons go in, it relies on the Morrigan, Dardez finding an opening. Before an opening is even here, the Fire Giant is pulled by the Dragons.
By PBM there. They don't really have the shred. I mean, they're sort of asking the question here, but Netrioid, he's on the other side of the map. He's just split pushing down this tier 2 tower, and unless it gets that low, I mean, Oni Warriors, they're waiting
poked
for the right moment in, but now the Dragons are poked. They don't have the healing they want. Laz is in alone on the other side, and the Warriors, they steal it away. It's just Genetics who is in range of the Fire Giant. A runic bomb takes it away, and LASBRA gets punished on the backside of the fight. LASBRA zones 3, but he doesn't zone Genetics with the runic bomb, and Oni Warriors get everything.
And right after getting this Fire Giant, Dardez also loses his beads. SoloOrTroll has so much confidence right now. Maybe a little too much. Maybe a little too much. He's getting half health and dropping lower.
Whoa! VaporishCoast, he might get taken down. He's forced to use the Aegis. And over the wall, Sot not able to land the kill there. But now they're on the push. Oni Warriors with the waves looking for a little bit more.
Onk.
They still have LASBRA down for 5 seconds. Just a little bit more damage needed on this mid-bird. But the Jade Dragons able to push back the Warriors. And now Dardez transforms in and it's looking for, pulls back in, gets the beads off Genetics. At least they're able to keep their Phoenix alive.
And what a disaster by the Dragons there. They pull that Fire Giant, they lose it. Wait, SoloOrTroll trying to make a play here. He has no beads available.
Gotta be careful. Dash in from LASBRA, and it should secure the kill, but the trade is there.
Wait,
And
it's a bait.
Panitom is here with a double wall and a dunk to secure the first one. Pegon grabs the second one, and Nika, he's got no Aegis, will fall down. A double kill for Panitom, and now they might have the re-engage on the push.
And with 3 dead, there's a potential end spot here. Dardez, no ult available. Mike, very low damage. He's trying to make a play.
Panitom gets stunned out and does not die. Dardez essentially gives away his life
They've
for
got
that
wave.
attempt, and they've got a wave to push in. Just the backdoor protection
Is that
removed.
it?
This would still be dangerous. 10 seconds on the spawn of LASBRA. PBM coming up behind everybody. They don't have minions to tank the Titan, and PBM has to do enough to disrupt as the damage comes through. LASBRA spawns up, but I'm not sure it'll be enough. Oni Warriors take game 2.
And lucky for them, the Titan spawned in right lane. And unfortunately, their Titan lost, so it dies and respawns back in base. If it goes the other way and their Titan lives, there's no end potential there because nobody goes right to push that out. And I mean, we're talking Fire Giants get stolen. We have middle pushed. They chase out because we thought SoloOrTroll was maybe making a mistake there, but he's baiting them the entire time. And then they kill 3, they push through mid, they kill Panitom, and they end the game.
How many things have to go right there for the Oni Warriors to just find an end out of nowhere? Look at that, dude. Look at this. Oh, that was fun. That was fun. No, dude, how many things have to go right? They steal the Fire Giant. They take away some of those kills. SoloOrTroll doing a little bit of baiting. We saw yesterday on the tier as well, just leaving a triple kill from Pegon. He does love to do it. And then the Jade Dragons, they maybe over push a little bit there in the mid lane, and where they had successfully defended their mid Phoenix, they over push, then they give away the game all in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, they saw the opening on the Solo, they kill him. Fortunately, they weren't ready for the rest of the Warriors to be around the corner. And I mean, it was a blown up fight by the Warriors there.
The re-engage is beautiful from the Warriors. They take game number 2 at the snap of their fingers. We'll to see how the Dragons bounce back in game number 3. Stick around after the break.
You love me. You love me. You love me. Tell me you love me. Tell me you love me.
We watch the sun go down over the same old town, like so many times before. We look at the same old stars, battle the same old wars, like so many times before. And I know that we're not perfect, but I'm gonna miss all that we had. Yeah, I know that we're not perfect, but I need this night for the last time. Stay, stay. No, you're gone in the morning, but I'll be okay if you stay. Stay. No, you're gone in the morning, but I'll be okay if you stay. If you stay. No, you're gone in the morning, but I'll be okay. We were never meant to last, but all the fun times we had, I'll never forget. We will always share a bond, no matter what, 'cause you have a piece of my heart. And I know that we're not perfect, but I'm gonna miss all that we had. Yeah, I know that we're not perfect, but I need this night for the last time.
The road's maybe not as well paved as we thought it was when we last left the desk, but the Warriors still reached their destination 2-0 and a lead for them. Trelly, you were right about something that led you to be wrong about something else, which
Okay.
was
Please
the
tell.
nature of the Warriors. You had down to a pat, which is they don't like playing the same god 2 times in a row,
Yep.
which unfortunately made it so that the Ullr went solo and the Raijin went mid. Though after watching it, maybe it should have been the other way. Maybe it would have been a cleaner game for.
I think it would have just been like blanket better if they swapped, but after, Pegon had a rough start, after, SOT got some itemization online, let's face it, the Jade Dragons were, popping off early. They had pressure. The Dardez were owning, plural. There was 2 of them. And then off of some sketchy objective play, a couple objective steals, and notably the Fire Giant steal that Genetics was able to get, it was just the Oni Warriors, they don't need much, right? You give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, and that's exactly what happened. It was just one small misplay where the Runic Bomb is able to confirm the FG, and then they just run it down, they get a couple picks, and they're like, hey, we've got time. It was just PolarBearMike, and I believe LASBRA was up in like 8 seconds, and I was like, do they actually have the damage to end? They most certainly did. The Sobek just couldn't stall long enough, and this ended up being a very quick game, which if you look at 13 minutes, 14 minutes, and it's 6-0, you expect a quick game, but not for the Zero team.
And realistically, first off,
Doink.
what an auto. what a level head and great kill from Coast. But the thing is all these kills, if you're looking at it, it's Dragons. They're up 6-0, and they're up 3,000 gold 16 minutes in. That feels like a good spot, but now you're going to start to see where everything changed. First off, like that, you had mentioned it, like objective play that gets a little sketchy.
That bomb is what stole fire, by the way.
That yeah, and that's the thing. So you steal a pyro that then steals your fire, but it also cuts that gold lead. I mean, 3,000, 20 minutes in, it's a small lead for the Dragons, but realistically, it cut everything that they had worked towards. This empire they had built on the back of their kills. It cuts it back down to nothing. And so even though they had such a great early game, they didn't really have as big a lead, say, as we saw yesterday when the Warriors were playing the Ravens.
Yep, that's a good point as well. With a lead like that, kills-wise, you should be able to find a bit more farm. You should be able to push your lead, maybe to the point where Sot doesn't feel comfortable going up for a steal like that, or maybe to the point where Genetics doesn't feel like he can even go up and drop that Runic Bomb. But that lead was not there because the Oni Warriors, even if they're losing some fights, even if they're getting picked a bit, they know how to farm well, they know how to clear their waves, they know how to confirm their camps, that sort of thing. So the lead was just not massive, and I guess that's the issue there, right? If the Oni Warriors see even a little bit, they're going to fight it. They're not going to sit back and go, okay, we have to give up Fire Giant, we're going to defend under Phoenix. No, they're going to just W key at the Fire Giant because they feel confident.
Well, now you've got to do or not die, 4th seed for the Dragons, right? And that means, again, for those of you who are watching, election of choice of the last 2 teams as opponents at World. So 3rd seed gets 2, well, 1 choice of 2, as opposed to the Dragons, who's just left for whatever is there. And so, grand scheme, Warriors have 1 more game. They get a little more leeway. In theory, an easier bracket, right? That's kind of what it is 1st seed can choose who they think they have a good matchup into. 2nd seed will choose who they think they have the best matchup into of the 3 remaining. 3rd seed would choose their best matchup, and then the Dragons are left with hope and dreams that their matchup will be fine when they go into Worlds. In the event they lose this, of course, we've seen them down 2-0 before, and they've been able to push it to the distance, so not to hold our breath. Warriors will be the first pick team for yet the 3rd game in a row. And the bans are similar and the same, actually, as last game. Ullr, Poseidon, Puch from the Warriors, Izanami, Athena, and then a TBD down there for the Dragons. Do you like... look, I can't believe I was about to ask that. The gods the Warriors got in the top 3 were ridiculous.
Yeah, 100%.
Surely you don't let one of those through.
Well, I mean, the Jade Dragons were able to find their early lead. If I'm them, I'm thinking, hey, we can do 80% of that game, like just run it back. And as long as we don't get a Pyro stolen, which doesn't then snowball effect and get our Fire Giant stolen, which then snowball effect gets us to just lose the game, then we are in a much better spot to just win. So this is one of the rare situations where a team that lost, I wouldn't hate, trying to prioritize Daji the Morrigan. Like that is still okay with me. But if I can choose, and if I'm the Jade Dragons and I have the option to not face the Chernobog Raijin, I'm probably going to, deal with that as well. It wasn't like Netrioid had that much control on the Chernobog early on, which he never does.
True.
Right? It's not like Chernobog. We rarely see those global halfway across the map, like pre-level 12 ults from a Cherno. It's just at level 20, when you're full build, that's when he gets annoying. So I can see why the Jade Dragons are like, he can have that back. That's not the end of the world. But if that game got to 30 minutes, you really would have felt why you don't want to give that pick up.
Chernobog will be the first pick for the Warriors, as Ullr was the last ban for the Dragons. We waited for that to come through. Could be several against several players that run it. Last time around, I had asked you about Maman Khepri, but we might have to wait and see what the support pick is. Maman is hovered and locked for the Dragons. Flexible, though we've only really seen it go mid.
Wow.
But with the Morrigan locked in beside it, Trelly, I think that makes it a little less flexible as to where it's going to be going.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I don't think that Maman gets her strength in the mid lane. That's why I didn't want it to go to Dardez. The Morrigan lock-in tells me it likely won't. So now we get to see a different look at the Maman Brigitte. But of course, that means Raijin and Yemoja are still available. Will Genetics play it twice, though? That is the question. No. He wants to switch it up. He says, you know what, Jade Dragons? Take it. If you want the Yemoja, it's all yours. Khepri Raijin this time around. Still, disgusting top 3 for the Oni Warriors. But they change it up a little bit.
In your mind, should Pegon still be banned from playing the Raijin if he has a Khepri behind him?
I don't think that he wants to play it twice. That's just it. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
I've been watching this Oni Warrior squad for a while.
Net's the only one.
Yeah, Netrioid will one trick a god. He does not care. He's like, give me ease every game. You know, like that's fine. But Pegon, Panitom. I mean, Panitom would take Susano a lot, but it's Pegon and Sod in particular. They're just like, I just played Raijin, man. Like, give me something else.
And you know, to give him some credit, like a little life raft over to him. I do the same thing when I'm actually like queuing. Like I hate playing the same, except for Maui. Maui I'll play several times in a row, but all the other supports I gotta click around.
Is World's priority on the line when you're queuing your casuals?
Oh, you know it, man. It is the most serious, engaged thing in the world. They're up 2-0. They can play whatever the hell they want right now. Charon gets locked in for the Dragons. And someone who we saw, I think they banned out, actually, over the last couple of games. But gives them some aggression. A good, I'm going to call it a tidal wave, even though that's not exactly what it is. But you send it through, and it can cause a tidal wave for your team, especially with a Maman right behind it, a Morrigan right behind that. So the Dragons, a good top 3, although Cherno, Raijin, Khepri, again, maybe taking a little bit of favor. Ullr unbanned alongside the Thor. Now, Ullr runs a deep pull. We haven't seen Ullr run in a little while. Most of the magical carries, in fact, have been pretty much gone from the meta after their dominance for a few weeks, about a month ago. Not Athena, Amaterasu and Rom banned out by the Warriors. Trelly, I'm going to ask you a weird question, and luckily for me, that Hachi lock-in doesn't shift things around. Charon, solo or support?
Oh, definitely support. No, there's no way you're playing Guardians in solo right now. You just get so out-pressured by the mages. I mean, you could try it. It's just not fun, so I can see.
You'll just cry.
Yeah, you will cry. And the Oni Warriors taking the gamble that Nika doesn't want to play a mage in solo lane, not when you already have 4 magicals, and they ban the Amaterasu just in case he wants to look towards a warrior. With Ama being gone, there are not too many physicals left that are that high prio over in solo lane, so interested to see what that last pick is going to be, or if it is even going over towards Nika in the last pick. Whereas the Oni Warriors, this time around the Susano's not banned away. Panitom could certainly look to go towards that. His Thor is gone, so it's not like he's going to be able to use that semi-global presence once again. But you assume that you're going into, you know, the Maman Brigitte in jungle. Not many assassins are going to love that 1v1, but there are still ways you can ignore. There are ways you can CC her and try and stay away. So maybe that's something on the mind of the Warriors, and they will just lock in that Susano. A Panitom classic. When you got the Khepri in the backline as well, don't have to worry about it. And that's why that Ullr ban came in. The Jade Dragons thought, you know what? If we know the Oni Warriors, they don't like playing the same god twice, which means Pegon's likely taking the Cherno.
Do you mean to say that you think the Apollo's going to Netrioid? Because like when do we get to see Apollo, man? I'm excited.
I mean, they could just send the Hunter over to solo lane. Let's be honest.
True.
Sod has done that as well. Sod has played, you know, Hunters in the solo. It could be Apollo solo, but I think that's what the Jade Dragons were thinking. Was that the Chernobog goes to Pegon and Sod takes the Raijin. Now that the Apollo gets locked in, Silver Branch changes kind of make him a little bit nuts if you can get that build online. Haven't seen the Silver Branch much. It's still been the traditional just you get Fail Not if you're like Chernobog, or in this case Apollo, and then you get your double crit online with your Leader's Cowl. But I still think a Silver Branch build could pop off here towards late game. It's just Khepri with 4 carries as far as I see.
And that's the interesting thing. So first off, not only 4 carries, but Cherno with like an instantaneous global presence. Apollo with admittedly a pretty heavy mana cost, but still global presence, right? He can traverse. It just takes a little longer. He also, long time ago, I believe maybe it was before the spicy changes, maybe it was in the spicy changes, however many patches ago. But Apollo got some buffs, right? Like, I mean, he was up there in that list, and it feels better. We'll see if it's good here by the Warriors. And with that last lock-in from the Dragons, we get to play an interesting game of Shuffle because they go for the Tsukuyomi. And I know you like Maman in the jungle.
Yep.
And we've seen what her laning phase can be like.
Yep.
Is that a Tsukuyomi solo? Or
it better be.
Maman just going over there?
It better be, man. I'm telling you. If you think Maman's mid clear is bad, try to throw her in a solo lane when she's likely up against again, if I'm guessing here with my, as advanced of a guess as I can give you.
Yeah.
I think that you hand the Cherno over to Pegon. You give Net the Apollo. You let Sot take Raijin. And again, he's probably just not going to do that because Sot doesn't like to play the Raijin. He wants to play one of the hunters. But that's what I would do. And then, yeah, Suki solo Maman jungle. That's the way I would throw these around. I can't get that. Like, you couldn't pay me to get in the head of Sot. It's just too difficult. This man's like, I think I can own them with Apollo in this game. Like, I don't doubt that he said those words. It's probably possible. So at this point, yeah, that's what I'm choosing. I am just, delegating those hunters to where I just said, let Sot play the Raijin. He's gonna have better clear than a Maman, especially if that was the solo pick. But yeah, I'm thinking Nika just takes the Tsukuyomi. That would be my guess.
It does alleviate a little bit of worry I had at the end, which was, I'm assuming Maman jungle up at the front, right?
Yep.
And I was wondering, man, Warriors aren't really in right now. Like, he's going to have to pick a mage over in solo, and then you're going to have 3 mages plus a guardian. Like, you're going to have too much magical damage. Maybe that's going to be the nail in the coffin. But they get a physical assassin at the very end, and now it's up to the Dragons. Will they be 4th seed, or will they fight back? We'll find out in Game 3.
Set point for the Oni Warriors, trying to push themselves to the number 3 seed at the World Championship. Still Frog, still inbound, still Doug, bringing the action on the battleground. And I was convinced Trelly had gotten into the mind of Sot. I really was.
It's impossible.
Yeah, no, it's not. I mean, it's just too difficult, but there's just got to be a lot going on up there.
What about the mind of Nika taking the Morrigan out of Dardez's hands?
Maybe you should have predicted that.
He should have predicted that.
Right.
Yeah, his job. Bad predictor.
Definitely, a little bit rough. 30% versus 70% on the poll there, so the crowd gains a little bit more favor back towards the Jade Dragons, not the 18% of game number 2 there. But, man, that 30% I think got locked in before they saw the Morrigan solo.
Yeah, I'm a little iffy with the Morrigan solo also. I think the Warriors have actually crafted a slightly impressive comp with, bar the Apollo, which is something we've not really seen that much, but I think Apollo with that Silver Branch build is also very strong, or even just the Fail Not build still feels pretty solid. And now you have that double global potential with both your hunters. And overall, you have this solo laner who should be able to bully out. This is a tough matchup for the Morrigan. If you ever get hit by any, the 1, the 2, the dash is very easy to hit, and it just blows up your invis. It's going to be a very tough matchup for Nika.
Yeah, there's a lot of tick damage on the Warriors side, too. You got Khepri, too.
True.
The jet stream from Panitom. It's going to be hard to play this Morrigan maybe as safely as you would like. But I think a lot of the pressure here sure to be on the transformations, right? You're thinking of Dardez playing this pick, and you're like, okay, yeah, he's going to transform at some point, and it's going to be dangerous, but I'm also really worried about his damage, because he'll just stealth up and delete somebody in the middle of a team fight. On the side of Nika, you're probably a little bit tankier on the Morrigan just to stay safe, so I think there's even more value on these transformations.
Wait, this is also the first game we've got LASBRA on Maman too, right? I'm pretty sure every other game went to Dardez on the Maman.
Yeah.
So now we have kind of 3 players playing just brand new characters. The Morrigan going over to Nika, Maman going to Laz, and Dardez taking that Tsukuyomi. So it's going to be kind of a big opening for the Dragons to kind of show what they're able to do with these characters.
The Dardez has played Tsukuyomi before. They did lose that game back when they played it, but certainly something that he's not completely unfamiliar with. I'm maybe even more focused on the Warriors draft specifically around this Apollo. We haven't seen Apollo in forever, it feels like. What inspires this pick?
I would assume the inspiration has to come down to that Silver Branch buff. Yes, you can go the normal build, but if you're going to go the normal build, there's just better hunters to be playing. And I think that's kind of the thing that sticks out to me, but the Silver Branch build on that Apollo does make a lot of sense. It does scale very hard. Yes, maybe the early mid-game not that strong, but the one-shot potential with that crit, that Silver Branch late game is going to be insane.
LASBRA pulled back here by Panitom. Look at this rotation from Sot. He is over here at 2 minutes into the game. LASBRA dashes away.
Coast?
And Coast will fall. LASBRA will fall as well. First 2 kills on the board for the Warriors.
And with blue buff spot.
Oh my.
Wait, solo?
He's dashing in. He
Aegis is the tower shot. And with the blue buff spawning, we actually have a little bit of pressure on that side of the map. Does not look like they want the invade. They just want to confirm their own blue. Don't know where Nika is. But Nika not rotating is able to push that wave under. But, I mean, if you're getting that much value from the rotation, if you're able to get one assist, like, that is a worthwhile rotation, especially if you're not really losing much, like, when leaving.
I think we had a kill over in duo lane as well. Genetics got the last hit there. And this is where the Dragons are pushed up on the left side. Maybe get punished a little bit here. Genetics grabs Coast, no beads usage. I don't know if he had it, but the tick damage gets there, and sure enough, Coast has the beads up and available. So I guess just not respecting the damage, and the Oni Warriors get 2 kills across the board instead of what would have just been a first blood.
Yeah, seems like a little bit of a greed by Coast, thinking that he's going to live that, but Apollo with the audacity in the early game, like, that's his strength. Yes, his base kit not all that strong, but if you can make good use of that passive, getting 100% attack speed after that 5th or that 10th auto, you have a lot of attack damage and a lot of strength in that 1v1. So a little disrespectful by Coast to kind of hold the beads, take the pluck, and the entire duration of that. I mean, he falls down for it. Now he's going to be a little bit on the back foot. Net's going to be able to get that Dev's gloves on first. Probably going to see Genetics get that Thieves a lot earlier than Mike because he also got that first blood. So big advantage over in solo, and it goes to mid too because of solo's rotation.
These supports are interesting to me. Genetics, he's gotten this Khepri banned away from him a lot this weekend. I think he's looked pretty powerful on this pick throughout the regular season. And this PBM on this Charon, not a pick that he's necessarily known for, not a pick we've seen him on very often, and I've seen a lot of mixed opinions on the Charon. I'll have to hold that, though. Still needs to use the beads if you're Coast, and the teleport was not there. It didn't stick to VaporishCoast, so he will get out of there. Still holds on to the beads.
Hey, those beads are going to be available and used at a good time soon, I can tell. But Panitom just barely missing that 3, does not allow him to chase down Coast on that ult. But so far, a lot of early pressure out by the Warriors, and not really on like an early game slanted comp. I think their comp scales very well, so they're just making plays and winning with those plays that they're making. Because you look across the board, I mean, you think about the early game the Dragons have, you wouldn't expect to see First Blood happening in duo.
Panitom under some pressure here. The ultimates come through, and they will find the first kill for the Dragons. But another SOT rotation! It is 5 minutes into the game, and SOT finds himself over here again. LASBRA under some pressure as Netrioid rotates in as well. And the Oni Warriors in 5 minutes, they've got 4 people here in the mid lane, 2 ADCs. This would be unprecedented to try and take a tier 1 tower this early, but they are showing they are not afraid to rotate.
And not afraid to use those globals on both sides. We have Apollo ulting in the mid, we have Nika rotating with that Chernobog ult because he sees SoloOrTroll in that rotation. And we kind of see what's going to be happening in the solo lane. It's going to be very hard for Nika to get that prio to be able to rotate before SoloOrTroll going to be getting poked down, and there's not going to be as much solo's going to be able to go. And you can tell with the builds, as you point, the Pythags versus the Chronos Pendant in this matchup, very, very Pythag-sided. Yes, maybe there's a little bit more poke potential on the side of the Chronos Pendant, but the sustain, the survivability the Pythags provides, and then on top of that, the aura when you fight on that Pythags, it's going to be through the roof for solo.
Have to keep track of this build for Nika. This is not the standard mage solo build that we have. So, I mean, I'm asking the question, will he even go defense? Will you even try to be a hybrid character? I'll have to revisit it a little bit later on, I think. But at this point, some rotations early from SoloOrTroll. That's really surprised me how he's playing this lane. We had a 2-minute and a 5-minute rotation from a solo laner, which is pretty atypical of how that lane usually gets played.
Yeah, and you think about how he's going to be able to do that, but actually a fight breaking out in mid.
Wow, Pegon under some pressure here, blink in from LASBRA, and Dardez doing some damage as well. Genetics with some solid peel right there. Still haven't seen that Khepri ult have to be used quite yet, but I think it's, you know, now that Genetics is rotated, it makes the mid 3v3 a little bit harder to get a pick there. So we'll hold that for a second. Netrioid thought he was going to look for a little bit more damage, but not sure he's got the same 1v1 potential on Apollo.
Yeah, the 1v1 tension with Apollo comes down to the ultimate ability being the start. And actually, Panitom blinks in.
Zod is here again as the teleport goes through.
He's all winning.
And Mike is looking for something. Huge ultimate from Dardez. Gets through 4
Solo?
members there. But SoloOrTroll is doing it all
Khepri
on
ult.
his own on the other side. And Dardez
Wow.
won't find the kill. A 3-for-0 swing for the Oni Warriors. And they're looking for even more as Nika will fall as well. 4-for-0 at 8 minutes for the Warriors.
And so many rotations by the Warriors. You said it. Solo's here again. Baffled that Solo showed up now 3 times prior to 8 minutes. And it comes back to how much pressure he's allowed to have in this lane. He can clear and then walk over. And Nika's not able to chase through the jungle because at best, if SoloOrTroll is waiting around the corner, ultimate is getting wasted by Nika to try to avoid a lot of Solo's damage because at his current point, Raijin has one-shot potential onto characters that have no protections. And right now, Nika, no protections. Going into that Deso, I'd assume maybe a possible Divine just to be able to fight back into the sustain that SoloOrTroll has. But no defense gone for yet for Nika.
Yeah, I think this poke really to come through. You can't necessarily take the fight if you're Nika, right? You never want to be just point-blank trading with the Raijin. And so it's like, okay, if you're not going to trade with me, I'm going to trade with your mid laner and see how you feel about that. Like, I'll just walk over and see how that goes for you. And so far, going heavily in favor of the Oni Warriors. Pre-10 minutes, this is almost a 3,000 gold lead. And experience lead, that's coming through as well. You've got a level lead in that mid 2v2 as well as the solo lane. Over in the dual lane, still have a small lead for VaporishCoast. He's been left alone over there. But, I mean, to get... that was almost a deicide at 8 minutes. It only wasn't because Coast and the ADCs just haven't rejoined the fray.
Yeah, I mean, 4 kills that early into the game is rather surprising. Getting even that close to a deicide, unless you're fighting on an objective, that's usually the only time you see it that early. But I kind of wanted to shout out Panitom quickly. This Susano's gotten nerfed recently, and Panitom is still willingly playing it and making great use out of it. Actually, a 3 on the left side. LASBRA seems to just be kind of take some pressure off. Shield buff is spawning. But I want to see this Warriors team move this pressure towards an actual objective. Yes, they're winning these fights. Yes, they're actually taking, you know, and forcing the Dragons into awkward positions, but they're still not really pushing their lead that much. It's kind of stagnated a little bit. They've not really gone for a gold fairy. Yes, they have the tier 1 tower, but they could be blowing this game out of proportions a lot quicker.
Yeah, I mean, it was last game that was maybe a little bit interesting in terms of the scaling. A big fire giant steal into sort of a game end maybe 2 or 3 minutes later comes out of nowhere. In this one, yes, a lead for the Oni Warriors and pressure on map to be sure. But what are your thoughts on the scaling of these compositions? Oni Warriors maybe feeling a little bit easier to execute, but I mean, without these 2 traditional tanks from the Dragons, what does their fight look like a little bit later? Hold that, though. Dardez needs some help, potentially. Maybe it's Sot who needs the help as he is in mid once again. And he looks like he's going to make it out. He almost jukes the ultimate, but he's still alive. And Pegon comes in and takes down Dardez. PBM is here to be taken down as well. Nika comes in, at least finishes off Sot. But now everybody chasing him down. And despite the triple stun, a double kill for Pegon. Once again, the Warriors on top.
And these globals, they're just making great use out of them. They're not 2v2s or 3v2s. They're going to be more than that because of the rotation prowess of this Warriors team. And you're asking kind of how these teams scale, what the late game kind of looks like. And it seems to be kind of up in the air. You've got double Hunters on one side, and then you've got almost triple Assassin on the Jade Dragon side with the Morrigan, the Maman, and the Tsukuyomi. But I mean, so far, this Tsukuyomi, 0-3-2, level 11 just ticks over to level 12, down 2 levels to this Chernobog mid. If you think about the late game of a Chernobog and what he can kind of do, it's at least somewhat matched by the Morrigan.
Pegon under some pressure here. LASBRA off the mark with that dash. He goes right through Pegon. He does find the kill, though. And SoloOrTroll trades it back. So you at least get that small trade for the Dragons, something they might have been looking for. As now with the beacons spawning, 12 minutes in, 2 versus 2, but all the pressure still in the hands of the Oni Warriors. If they want to step up to this, and it looks like they do, you've got genetics on the Khepri, Panitom perhaps looking for a little bit more damage there, but so far nobody really willing to use this global pressure to join him. Maybe Pegon, once he respawns, will be looking for this ultimate. Right now, though, Genex, he's just hanging out, man.
Yeah, this full Thebes, full Sava on Genex is going to make him very tanky, and as you're calling for, Pegon ults in.
Ults in and looks for Dardez, has to use the beads early, but Pegon dives into the wall and avoids the wave. Dardez has to go back in, but will lose his life in the process. Mike has to look for the escape, but now with Netrioid on the ultimate 4 here, and certainly will find the support. They take down Sot on the other side of things, so a 2-for-1, but pushing for a tier 2 at 13 minutes.
And with 4 strong here and Coast with no way to answer, this tier 2 is going down at 13 minutes, and with that, Pyro is available, Beacon is available, a big swing available for the Warriors here. And also on top of that, even this Gold Fury is something they can look at.
Yeah, with this double Hunter composition, I would expect them to maybe start asking some of these tougher objective questions a little bit earlier on in the game if they want to play around those. Gold Fury up. Pyromancer did just spawn. They take that down if you're the Oni Warriors. So now Runic Bomb in the pocket of Genetics. This might be a pull for the Dragons, though. Genetics is around, Panitom in the vicinity as well, but 4 strong for the Dragons, and Nika coming to join the fray, but will not give them the power they were looking for. All the while, Sot is still farming over on this right-hand side.
A potential 5v4 available for the Dragons, but they opt to play it a little bit slower, rotate Nika back to the solo lane. Maybe they want to make use of that global potential he has with the transformation into the Apollo or the Chernobog, because SoloOrTroll is not going to be able to match that global potential. He has to rotate first. And while we've seen him rotate a lot this game, it's different walking to mid lane and walking to this Gold Fury. It's almost twice as far away from Solo. But with the clear potential he has and the rotation prowess and just prio he has in this lane, it wouldn't be too surprising to see him clear out another wave and then walk over, especially with it being the only objective available on the match. He got the tier 1 tower. There's no real reason to be over there. Let's get ready for this Gold Fury. If you're the Oni Warriors, you're up about 5k. Let's try to push this a little bit more.
Aggressive positioning here from the Oni Warriors. Not where you might expect, though. Gold Fury's up. They've got 3 on the right-hand side instead. You heard the Magi's off of Nika. You got the dash in, but this might be a re-engage. Jade Dragons 5 strong on this right-hand side. The double root and the wave hits 3, but the dash from Sot and Netrioid joins him in the back. Pegon comes to the fray as well, and Dardez is in on the back line. Nika has the transformation, but the real Dardez is under some pressure as well. Nika looking to fall soon and will find the last auto. A 3-for-0 deep in the enemy jungle.
And this happens every once in a while if you're a Warriors fan, where you see them kind of flash back to season or phase 1 Warriors, where they are just trying to fight and outskill you everywhere. And that is what they are doing this game. They're pulling this Fire Giant 3 strong.
Dash in from Panitom. He's looking for the 1v2 and he won't find it. Instead, he will fall, and that might give the Dragons an opening. Low on the Fire Giant, need to look for the steal. The Warriors, they secure the FG, and they find the pick onto Mike as well. 4 strong on that Fire Giant at 16 minutes.
And with this Fire Giant now, the opportunity to push down right lane. Mike is dead for 15. And only 1 ult available. Looks like a 4v4 fight might break out here with LASBRA looking to behind.
I'm not sure if this is even a fight that the Dragons want to take. They say yes, though, and the ultimate from Dardez starts things off. He's getting punished, though. Nobody's able to join him. It's only LASBRA, and he's there a bit late. He has to try to dash to safety, but Sot will find the kill. And for trying to defend their tier 2, they lose 2 in the process, and now have minions to push on the right-hand side. Netrioid in. Ult from Pegon as well, as Nika will not make it out alive. Tries to ult himself, but that's 3 down now for the Dragons. And the Oni Warriors still pushing.
And with only 2 alive, Fire Giant strong on 4 of these 5 members. Phoenix starts to get pushed down a little bit. Nika solo dashes in.
Goes trying to ult away. You get Sot with the kill, though. It's only 17 minutes minutes
They're still
into
going.
the game. They've got a minion wave on right, and they're looking for the Phoenix. They will find it, but these low respawn timers, this could be dangerous for the Oni Warriors. They have to be careful on the overstay. Looks like they won't try and push for anything further, but I'm not sure you need anything further, man.
Nope.
That's 18 minutes, 2 Phoenixes down.
I mean, we were talking about 3,000 gold just 4 minutes ago, and now it's skyrocketed to almost an 11,000 gold lead. Phoenix is down on the right side, and we have a bunch of towers still available on left. Gold Fury is still available. Pyro's still available. This gold lead could skyrocket to 20K by the next time an actual fight happens.
I think if you're the Oni Warriors, you're not. I mean, you're pretty happy.
Oh, very
with how
happy.
things have gone. Yeah, I think maybe you get the Pyromancer, neutral objective. Maybe you get the Gold Fury. That'll be on the map. You try to push your gold lead a little bit ahead. But this is 11,000 at pre-20 minutes. 2 Phoenixes down. You still have all the towers up and left. Blasphemy for the Oni. I mean, what are they doing, man?
How are they not killing the towers?
Right. You still got towers up on that. They really got to clean up that gameplay. I mean, if you're the Dragons, what is the way back in at this point? Are you just relying on a mistake?
Stop fight. Well, I guess at this point you're kind of forced into fighting just to try to trade like a 1 for 2, 1 for 3 because you are so far behind. But taking all these fights into the Warriors and losing all of them as bad as they are, Pegon actually ulting in.
Pegon ulting into Mike, and he's getting chunked by the autos. The drums not in range,
Net?
though, and Coast instead becomes the focus, and he'll be taken down by Panitom. Pegon finds Nika at the same time, and they don't want to wait any longer. Frenzy gets popped at 19 minutes. They're looking for the Titan. Jade Dragons trying to fight back. Dardez into the back line, taken down. LASBRA
20
and
seconds.
TBM, the only members left alive, and they will not have enough. Pre-20 minutes, the Oni Warriors find the clean sweep.
24-5 for the Warriors. Every fight goes the Warriors' way. At worst, they lose 1 for like 3. The rest of the fights are almost wipes. We're talking in deicide levels like 2-3 times before 20 minutes. That is insane.
Before 10 minutes.
We
saw 4 for 0, man. Like, the Oni Warriors just came to that game and said, okay, we're going to pick what we want, and then we're going to play how we want. And I don't know if there's like a rhyme or reason to it necessarily. My mind still goes to Sot rotated 4 times in 10 minutes, right? I can't even get my solo laner in my ranked games to rotate at 20 minutes.
Let alone 4 times at 20 minutes. Like, that is insane. And also on top of that, Net was happy to ult in also with his global Apollo ult. But I mean, through and through a dominant performance, not just in this game, in this entire set by the Warriors. I mean, other than a little bit of a slower game 2, I mean, even the late game of game 2, you kind of got to shout out the Warriors, but really dominant set by them.
Absolutely dominant. And that win is going to secure 3rd seed at Worlds for the Oni Warriors. Jade Dragons, they'll still be heading to Worlds just at that 4th seed mark. That'll do it for me and Inbound on the cast. We'll throw it back to Gore and Trelly on the desk.
And I think Frog said it best, Trelly, when you look at this. First off, a great 3-0 for the Warriors, good victory for them. But in that last game, you really get to experience it. Flashbacks to what they were in Phase 1, which was just pure, unbridled aggression, to the point where even Genetics is leaning into it a little bit.
Yeah, it just seemed like there was nothing the Oni Warriors couldn't do that game. They could group up and fight wherever they wanted. The one moment where I knew the mentals of the Jade Dragons was going to be shattered was when Sot, he's like 1 HP. He dashes away. He gets under tower. Mike tries to dive him. Just doesn't have enough damage to finish it. You see Nika come in. He tries to dive him. Does get the kill. But then everyone collapses. He just Sot survived for way too long. And after that, it's like, bro, we used so much. And we barely killed 1. Like, there's just no way. Like, this was going to be such a hard game to come back from. And this is just what the Oni Warriors bring, man. They always have the ability to just take a game and absolutely run with it. I'm not going to say that it was over from picks and bans, but the composition surely didn't help.
Yeah, the Warriors just get to draft, I almost want to say, in any way they want to. I mean, Game 3 and in Game 2, you get a lot of really high power pick gods and or, I'm going to say in Panitom's case, one that is just classic and synonymous for you in victory with the Susano. And I was just happy to see that there was an Apollo not only locked in, but to find success. I'm really curious maybe to hear the thoughts on what an Apollo brings for Net, or if he just maybe likes him But that global presence between him and Cherno, and Charlie, you're talking crazy rotations constantly for this team.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's if you aren't using these picks correctly, it can be really bad, right? If you don't use your globals, you just have a Chernobog and Apollo in a team fight, and that's not always the best look. But if the map is split and you're using the full use of these globals, which is exactly what the Oni Warriors do here, they're just constantly flying across the map, that's when it can be super difficult to try and deal with. I mean, this was just not a great game here for the Jade Dragons. Obviously, they were up against, like I said, a Khepri and 4 carries. That's what it was, and that is they fought wherever and whenever they wanted.
And man, you see that in the slash line. First off, 2-0-13 for Genetics, right? So 2 kills, 0 deaths, with the 13 assists. Then what was it? 7-2, 6-2, 5-1, 4-0. Like, it's just a bunch of guys who are out there to get kills, only resulting in the 5 deaths for the Warriors, just running it down exactly the way that you would expect from a team that has played the way they have.
Yep.
And very importantly, 3rd seed secured. They will have a choice at Worlds of at least 2 teams to figure out who exactly they're going to be playing. We won't know who that is for quite some time. But what we do know is that not only did they win, not only are they 3rd, but we also have Netrioid standing by for an interview.
That's right, we do have Netrioid standing by. Congrats on the 3-0 sweep. I have to ask you guys, like, how does that feel for you guys to really take a 3-0, not now 3rd seed at Worlds? I mean, how's the energy feel in the booth?
I mean, it's feeling good, of course, better than after the loss against Levi's. I think it was a tough loss because I think we should have won, like the set 3-1 most. But we threw game 1, game 2 we won. Like, I mean, it's just kind of sad, right, to lose that kind of set. After that, we kind of just like mental reset is fine. Be happy. That's it.
You guys get the bounce back, one yesterday, one today as well. I got to ask about that 3rd game. You guys kind of pick a bunch of global pressure. You take the Apollo. That Apollo is not something we've seen in a while. Is that sort of a Netrioid special, or what's the idea?
I mean, I think 3rd game we saw how I mean, I don't know. It's just a global presence, in my opinion. Like, we just went like, oh, let's have some fun. We just picked double global ults and let's have some aerial support. And I think we went like every time we wanted support, like it was like, oh, chopper, helicopter, please, or Mayday, Mayday, and it was like, it's funny.
Yeah, you call for Mayday and you guys join everybody in the mid lane. You get Sot rotating over as well at like 2 and 5 minutes. I mean, just a ton of great stuff from you guys. Have to ask, right? We're going towards Worlds. You guys have made it secured 3rd seed, and now there's about a month and a half break. What's the idea for the team? How are you guys feeling going into that, and what's the prep going to look like?
Well, after this, of course, a little break, you know, a little maybe 1 week break, who knows? And after that, just back on the full grinding, of course. Want to win Worlds. I think we have everything to win Worlds this year, and my team is pretty sick, so why not just keep grinding and just keep like giving your 100%.
You've given 100%. Team's pretty sick. Well, congrats once again on the 3-0. We'll throw it back to the desk.
Well, that's all you need to hear, Charlie, right? A little break. Thanksgiving's coming up, so perfect time for everyone to relax, hang out, and then back on that grind, which for a lot of the Warriors means a ton of streaming. I feel like there's going to be a lot of rank queues. Sot's already over like 2,000 just this season.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's already
insane.
live. He might be.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe. Right? Streaming starting soon screen now.
Yep.
Gets home, slams the ranked queues. Actually, would probably watch the next set. Then slams the ranked queues for the next 10 hours.
Yeah, he could probably just live react to that set while he's playing. I wouldn't doubt it. The man, he can multitask.
He can
what
do
I've
both.
seen.
Yeah,
exactly.
you know what? And yeah, based on what we've seen, he's perfectly capable of it. But that is 3rd seed for the Warriors, 4th seed guaranteed for the Dragons. Of course, both of those teams will be going to Worlds, as will the next 2 teams that we watch. It's the last set of the playoffs to determine 1st and 2nd seed going towards World. Ferryman and Leviathans are the teams that are going to be taking each other on. Trelly, this one just has that energy. It's going to be a good set. It's 2 drastic teams. There's a money difference, a seeding difference, a whole lot going into Worlds, as well as now that we know what the 3rd, 4th seed is, you can play a little bit of game with the bracket, right? Because you know 1st, 4th usually on one side of the bracket, 2nd, 3rd on the other side of the bracket. If you get 2nd here, you've got the Warriors on your side, and there's a chance you meet them in like semis. So all of a sudden, maybe you're trying to game that, win a little bit of it, and avoid certain things happening in the bracket. And of course, getting that choice of the 4 teams from the qualifying tournament at the beginning of January really can make a difference for you. So a lot of pressure and a lot of good Smite, I imagine, in this next set.
I mean, this is the set we've been all waiting for, right? You know, figuring out the first and second seed is going to be a big deal, as you said. Money, placement, just bragging rights, a lot on the line here. And if the Smite World Championship is in your future, which it should be for just about everyone watching this, it's not going to be a match you want to miss.
It's going to be a fun one, and it's going to be, I think, it's going to be great. I'm just really excited. I'm almost excited to the point where I don't know what to say, in which I'll save myself, and we can go to a quick break. But then when we get back, we've got Ferryman and Leviathans.